My name is Erica Lorraine Spencer, and I remain subject to state surveillance and terrorism by the state of California that is operating a malicious targeting system, which is referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring via communication devices. And it is in violation of federal stalking statute 18 U.S.C. sections 2261A subsections 1 and 2. My website and podcast serve the public good by publishing evidence of the public entity's ceaseless engagement in a pattern of conduct intended to stalk and monitor via communication devices, surveil, harass, and terrorize an American citizen in concert with the people of the state of California. Documentation serves the lawful purposes of wide exposure, federal prosecution, and influencing federal legislation with policies specifically designed to punish, dismantle, and disincentivize an unprecedented targeting system by a public entity that acts in concert with the people of the state in order to criminally place under surveillance and terrorize an American citizen, which is a matter of public corruption in the state of California. It is currently 12:54 a.m. on Wednesday, September 25th, 2024, and this is ongoing documentation regarding AVANATH Communities. This is the corporate actor who is going to be subject to. This is the people of the state acting commercially while they are profiting, and the entity's pattern of conduct is underway. AVANATH Capital Management LLC, whose corporate headquarters is located in Irvine, California, is engaged in federal group stalking and monitoring, and that is as precise as if I were to go to 1920. I believe their address is 19. Let me confirm their corporate headquarters address right now, because this is the 1920 Main Street, suite number 150 in Irvine, California. The fake sun is right over the top of my head as I go to AVANATH Capital Management LLC. They are indeed a group stalker. Okay, they're engaged in state surveillance, and they are also a group stalker while their real property is the facilitating venue where the pattern of conduct is underway. AVANATH Capital Management LLC, whose corporate headquarters again is located at 1920 Main Street, suite number 150 in Irvine, California. By the way, that's Orange County, where I documented the Costa Mesa Police Department, the Orange County Sheriff's Department, replete with what is the entity group stalking by helicopter while that fake sun is over me. It is the P.O.C. and the entity is indeed engaged in the pattern of conduct in Irvine, where this corporate actor is physically located. The corporate actor is located here, while the Woodside Senior Apartments, one of many properties where state surveillance is underway, and AVANATH Communities is in violation of, and it will be prosecuted under federal law for engaging in state surveillance vicariously, if you will, while this corporate actor is profiting, while they are providing housing to domestic terrorists, such as the Demon. This is a third-party actor. This is the government that's living at a facilitating venue, maliciously engaged in the P.O.C., as opposed to a private citizen engaging in free activity, free constitutionally protected conduct. That is under no circumstances a violation of existing state or federal laws. That is the fallacy, the illusion that is presented where the P.O.C. is underway. The government's engaged in surveillance, and it is demonic activity. It's satanic. Okay, what the government is practicing and the government is necessarily relying on, cannot do it without the people of the state, who, by the way, are surrounded by the evidence while they are independently. This is distinct and separate from what the state is doing. The people of the state, who are a necessary aspect and a vital aspect of the P.O.C. by the state of California, have unilaterally demonstrated demon possession and malicious engagement in the pattern of conduct. And so that is teamed up with what is the group stalker, that is the government, the state, that is engaging in the hallmark of in the specific environment. That is where the government is maintaining not only constructive presence, because in that specific environment, the government is engaged in group stalking directly, using planes and helicopters, using police, fire, and ambulance. And in that specific environment, amongst the state acting directly, so are the demon-possessed population, the people of the state. This is Woodside Senior Apartments at 408 West G Street and 302 West G Street in Ontario, California. Woodside Senior Apartments, a facilitating venue. Under no circumstances any constitutionally protected or legitimate business that is under any circumstances protected with regard to the prosecution of AVANATH Communities, which is just one business. You're prosecuting, again, 7-Eleven that's in relevant position across the street. You're prosecuting the entire shopping plaza that is this is at the west end of G Street, in relevant position, making money all day long while they're in relevant position. Every time the helicopters are flying over, they're engaged in state surveillance while they're in relevant position, engaged in federal stalking as a population. Because when I go to that shopping plaza, you know that because the fake sun remains right over me at that shopping plaza. They are engaged in the P.O.C. in relevant position while it remains over Woodside Senior Apartments. As I'm at Woodside Senior Apartments, they're engaged in the pattern of conduct while I go to that shopping plaza and drive past or walk past that shopping plaza, and that fake sun remains over me, speaking to a statewide P.O.C. that is demonic in nature. And so while I remain here, you're understanding what is this third party's criminal conduct and the far-reaching repercussions of it. This is the entity that is acting on, that is living inside of a facilitating venue that is specifically at 408 West G Street, apartment number 55, in Ontario, California, 91762. And the entity is engaging in what is, again, this is demonic. And so not only am I speaking to the pattern of conduct, you want to reference, for example, the documentation that you heard on September 19, 2024. This is demonic activity that you're listening to. And what you hear is the amplification. Okay. Amplification, meaning this is you're witnessing the demonic. When you're looking at the freeway while I'm inside of the Monrovia courtyard by Marriott Hotel in Monrovia, California, you can see the 210 freeway, but you're not going to hear the 210 freeway inside of your hotel room, nor is it ordinary practice for you to build a hotel and you're charging hundreds of dollars for that room. Hotels are traditionally something where you're relaxing, you're paying for a nice stay, it's away from home and traveling en route or whatever the details are. You're not paying for some loud ruckus environment where everything, including walking in the hallways, getting on the elevators, housekeeping in the rooms around you, and the freeway outside, and everybody on the streets and on the highways is heard inside of your hotel room. This is not the ordinary business practices of hotels that are charging. Not only that, it's not the natural environment, and the context is that those hotels, each of them are shown to be where the sun is rising and setting. Speaking to what is the isolation of that universe that is centered around one single building as I remain inside of it. And so what you heard on September 19, 2024 is what the entity is engaging in. And so you have a demon that's inside of apartment number 55. And this is a serious condition. This demon, and this is built into the conviction of the domestic terrorists, they will be subject to mental examinations. Because this is what is walking around free right now in the state of California. It is a public safety concern, and this is mental illness exposed. It's not a secret. While you are engaging in very highly mentally disturbed conduct, not only is this a person who was demon possessed, who is engaged in criminal activity inside of a facilitating venue, not a private residence, and they're acting as a government actor, pacing back and forth in the living room, which is creating earthquake-like conduct as though the ceiling is cracking. And as though they're dropping bowling balls as they engage in what is a demon, knowing that they're being documented, then engages in more of that criminal activity that it's monitoring. That's the mental illness of a psychopath who is going to federal prison. This third party inside of apartment number 55 is going to federal prison for domestic terrorism, for federal stalking, for acting with impunity and high level of malice, engaging in a conspiracy to murder an American citizen, to kidnap an American citizen, to keep them criminally under surveillance, having no warrant or probable cause, to do so in concert with the terrorist organization masquerading as a police department, the Ontario Police. They're going to federal prison. All right. And they're doing so with the Ontario International Airport. They're doing so with the state of California that's utilizing the demonic method of sounding trains inside of this apartment, which under no circumstances is ever going to be heard inside of the apartment. It's not even going to be heard on the block of Vine and G Street. That is the outward demonstration of demon possession by the whole population that's surrounding you, living in their houses and in their apartments and working at the 7-Eleven and shopping at the 7-Eleven and walking all around. They're all demons that are in that environment. Group stalking together under the fake sun that's rising and setting at Woodside Senior Apartments in Ontario. All right. And so this is what I want to make sure that I'm capturing, because while I am subject to the pattern of conduct, I want to make sure that it's clear. AVANATH Communities, which represents nothing other than the people of the state. They are the same commercial actor. Amazon Prime is AVANATH Communities. Okay. They're coming onto the grounds as a commercial actor maliciously engaged in the elements of monitoring. They're group stalking with the entity that's using trains while they're crossing path on the property, while with the entity that you saw in video stalking with the state, stalking in helicopter. Amazon Prime engaging in the elements of monitoring in concert with that state. Group stalking while the demon in apartment 55 is the means of what is a demon that's walking back and forth. And the demonic is that it sounds sounding as though the ceiling is cracking. That's not the audible activity of you walking in your apartment. And it is also not the construct of the apartment building. Okay, this is built into the P.O.C. It does not matter the nature of or what city I'm in. This is the identical P.O.C. no matter what hotel, no matter what apartment, no matter what house, no matter what location. It is the pattern of conduct where the fake sun is rising and setting. And that's also how you know this is demonic, and it's not the natural audible activity created, which again, walking in your apartment on the second floor, regardless of your weight, is speaking to what is the elements of monitoring. It's simultaneously creating noise, which is inherently amplified because this is a demon that's walking, and everything that demons are doing is chaotic. It is loud and disruptive. And that's not only because this is a demon possessed person. This is a human body that is filled with the spirit of Satan. And Satan is engaging in what is using this person to monitor another. And they're also doing so while they are literally a psychopath, posing a threat to not only themselves, but again, the vulnerable in society, both children and senior citizens, and literally to the public in general. The likes of what is filling the apartment of 55, the likes of what are driving Amazon Prime vehicles, group stalking while maliciously engaging in what is the business of Amazon, which Amazon is going to be held accountable for civilly and criminally. Just speaking to what is the people of the state and all the ways in which you're looking at the same entity. The people of the state acting commercially, living in relevant position are the people of the state. Coming onto the grounds and visiting some demon that lives at the property are the same people of the state. Working at the grounds, AVANATH Communities employee in apartment number 41, the people of the state. You're looking at the same exact pattern of conduct that is demonic when you are an employee walking by and impossible light activity is flashing about inside of this apartment. That's never the product of any sunlight. By the way, the sun is not going to stay over an apartment complex for 12 hours, for 11, 10, or 9 hours. That is speaking to what is, again, filling the apartment of 55. And this is indeed a mentally ill person who is going to federal prison. And you're not going to federal prison for 3 to 6 months for engaging in domestic terrorism in the United States. They are also engaged in federal stalking. The fact that you are engaged in state surveillance with a corrupt law enforcement agency, that is very serious time in federal prison. On top of that, he or she is engaged in federal stalking, which is speaking to, again, federal time. It's a distinct basis for federal prison based on the severity, the nature of the crime. That's existing federal law, and the language is speaking to what determines the punishment for engaging in federal stalking. And as I've already stated before, engaging in surveillance with any public entity is a basis for federal prison, the highest level of punishment for that. And so there is that. And there's also the fact that the entity is posing an impermissible threat. And the demon, the third party, the government actor that is living inside of an apartment at a facilitating venue is posing the highest threat that the entity that is acting domestically, if you will, the people of the state, the constituents of the state, who are the face of the government, posing an ongoing threat to your life, conspiring while you're group stalking. You are furthering the conspiracy to murder and kidnap an American citizen. You are going to federal prison for that. And while you maintain real-time knowledge, this is the demon that I'm documenting minute by minute. And so I want to go over my documentation that I've been capturing that this demon is monitoring. And the more that I documented on my Samsung Notes, that is the operation of my communication device, the more that this demon at 12 o'clock in the morning, 1, 2, 3, as I've documented it, as I get up and move, so does this demon. This is group stalking inside of the apartment where you are paying rent. You have no shelter from that federal prosecution. And understand that this is a demon, a third party that is not acting individually. They are acting as an entity. The entity is residing inside of apartment 55. The entity will be prosecuted as that entity that is acting through just this demon who is exploiting, that is capitalizing off of presence by virtue of living at the crime scene. That's called malice. That's called malice. The government is using the people of the state that live all around you, and they're all the same condition, and they are all engaging in what is a tag team criminal conduct surrounding you on a ceaseless basis, and engaging in psychological torture on a ceaseless basis, whether it's the planes and the helicopters and the trains, or the demon that's living next to you and above you, walking all around you, driving all around where it is that you're shopping, where it is that you live and remain, and doing so with knowledge of any and everything that you're doing, including while you're engaged in any private activity, and also increasing in it as you are aware of it and are documenting it. And that's the nature of the evidence that I'm capturing. And so on the Samsung Notes, again, I want to be clear, 1:08 a.m. This demon, I'm touching my phone right now. As I was touching my phone 2 minutes ago, the demon begins pacing in the living room. I believe this is a 1-bedroom apartment. That's the floor plan of the apartment above. The living room is directly above the living room that I'm inside of. And this demon is engaging in what is pacing back and forth in the living room, and the cracking, the sound of the cracking ceiling, as though it's cracking, that's what it sounds like, is occurring with simultaneity to my touching my phone screen. Okay. That is the demon possessed who are engaged in surveillance, by the way, in the U.S. This is the P.O.C. The demons that were stalking in helicopters in LA, for example. The moment that I began documenting the people of the state, as I began documenting Maria Solis Alvarez, the entity would arrive in a helicopter in a manner that you can perceive, because they weren't going anywhere in helicopters. They were engaged in 24/7 surveillance, which Dominic Choi knows exactly what's going on, knew exactly what was going on with his helicopters. You're engaged in a lot of expenditures keeping those helicopters gassed up. I mean, you're not ignorant about that, nor can you reasonably contend ignorance. In the same way, it's the same pattern of conduct. It's amplification. What's the method? A demon that's pacing in an apartment building right above. And the entity that's aware of what you're doing in the same way that they're aware of it when they're stalking in helicopters, that is speaking to what is an intent to harass and terrorize as a demon-possessed entity, keeping you under surveillance and seeking to do so while you document it. This is what an entity is doing. And as I touch my phone at 1:06 a.m., so the demon is pacing above. That's criminal activity. And it's also terrorism because it's demonic. All right. And it's occurring while you're capitalizing off of living at a crime scene. That malice you're going to federal prison for. The impunity is exhibited in the fact that this is a psychopath who will be subject to mental examinations, as will any and all group stalkers. This is not only a corrupt entity that's engaged in state surveillance to the state of California, but this is also exposing mental illness, vast mental illness that is not being diagnosed, that is overlooked, and also intentionally not addressed. There is a whole false narrative regarding mental illness. And let me be clear, in California, the abuse of this system of diagnosing a mental illness, addressing mental illness by those that are exhibiting mental illness. These are demons calling themselves psychiatrists. They're group stalking with the San Bernardino County. They're group stalking with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. They're engaging in demonic pacing and engineer light in the facilities where they are, again, supposed to be the medical professionals, and they are mentally ill psychopaths group stalking, diagnosing, and I put that in air quotes, diagnosing mental illness. They are the same exact condition of the demon possessed person that is group stalking in apartment 55. And that's what's not being discussed. Okay. The spiritual condition is the explanation regarding the decision making, regarding the behavioral, the personality defects, the threat to the public is what that manifests itself as. Those are the ones that get possession of weapons and are shooting up the public. Those are the ones that are abusing children, abusing people that they know and they don't know for no reason whatsoever. Okay, those are the people of the state, the demon-possessed population that are walking around with no warnings to American citizens like myself who are unsuspecting. You're summoning them to your house, calling the police because your neighbors are harassing you, and your neighbors and the police are group stalking you. And it's a threat to your life, and you're not even aware of it. Okay, so the entity is engaging in what is the pattern of conduct, and this demon that's engaging in what is pacing. This is, again, a violation of quiet enjoyment, all the ways in which you're going to prosecute AVANATH, civilly and criminally. Okay. But it is, while they're doing so, the fact that you're walking is something that, and what you heard on September 19th, 2024, this is the sound of a vacuum that is amplified in volume. Okay. The structure of the apartments are not such that when you're vacuuming, it's going to disrupt. I'm not going to hear you vacuuming on the opposite side of the walls inside of your apartment. And while you're above me, and while I'm vacuuming, you can hear it in your apartment above me. The entity is engaging in what is maintaining elements of monitoring. And as unrealistic as it is, remember, the fake sun is also unrealistic. It's very highly unintelligent. All you had to do is pay attention to it. This is what the entity is doing with the sound of all the noise methods of group stalking. All right. It's called audible activity, and it's all amplified. No matter how far away the helicopter is, no matter how far away the plane is, no matter the structure of the building where the demons who are filling that building, be it a facility such as West Valley Detention Center or an apartment building complex such as Woodside Senior Apartments, the entity maintains the audible activity as though they are paper thin walls, and you can hear straight through them. In Westside Detention Center, where I was kidnapped, and these demons were pacing around in engineer light, keeping a fake sun over that jail all day, and engineer light going down the walls, across the floor, and up the opposite wall for the duration of the day, where demons calling themselves medical professionals were pacing in and out in that engineer light, pursuant to what I was doing as I was doing it, while engineer light was also inside of the depths of the cell. And you have to see the structure of that cell in order to know, and that facility, in order to know that there is no sunlight would ever be in those facilities ever. There's no windows providing for it. And that wasn't sunlight. It was engineer light. So they were molesting, invading my cell within possible light activity, and they were pacing in and out of those facilities while bearing weapons, while wearing badges, while identifying themselves as state actors such as psychiatrists who were on cameras engaging in what is libel, manufacturing not only a mental illness condition, but also a relationship with me, while I was clearly documenting on the cameras the fact that I'm an attorney, that's my bar number, there's my name, I was kidnapped, never had an arrest, never had an arraignment, I do not have any mental illness, this is defamation, all of this, which is clearly demonstrating the fact that I have no business in that facility. But the entity was engaging in what is libelous criminal activity, and they share the same conditions while they are government actors as the demon who is being documented as I'm capturing on my Samsung notes. And so I want to make sure that I'm discussing this because this is relevant to, again, the P.O.C. and the demon possessed. And also the prosecution, civil and criminally, of AVANATH Capital Management, LLC, who is at a facilitating venue in Irvine, California, where there cannot possibly be any sun because Woodside Senior Apartments, their property in Ontario, California, has a documented sun. There's only one, not 14, and it's remaining over this apartment complex from 7:38 in the morning until 6 p.m., replete with what is impossible light activity that's not sunlight or any product of the maintenance of the light source that's remaining for 12 hours. The impossible light activity inside of this apartment is distinct from that light source. Under no circumstances would any of that light be inside of this apartment. And in that environment is where terrorists, such as the demon-possessed person in apartment number 55, acting in sync with the demons who are an Ontario Police Department who's to be disbanded, and many of them are going to federal prison as their names are produced, stalking in helicopters, and engaging in multiple acts of kidnapping from 2019 until 2021. Okay, the entity is engaging in what is the pattern of conduct with the entity that's engaged in criminal summoning, and also engaging in group stalking with the rest of the people of the state. As, for example, the Ontario International Airport is amplified audible activity alternating with the demon in apartment number 55. The demons that are group stalking in helicopters, amplified audible activity, sensational activity, which is alternating with the demon in apartment number 55, who is pacing above. This is the provision of the state, and you can have that psychopath where you've seen my hand on camera going back and forth and back and forth and back. That's what this demon is doing above my head. This is mental illness that is not being diagnosed because the mentally ill, the demon possessed, are calling themselves psychiatrists in the state of California. Okay. Mental illness is something that is rooted in what is spiritually wrong with you. Yes, your need for the Lord Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, the Holy Spirit that would seal you and protect you from being owned and provoked and being animated by the spirit of Satan, is very much the cause of your so-called mental illness. Just want to point that out. So the entity is engaging in what is the pattern of conduct, which is speaking to demon possession of a third party. And just as an aside, what is referred to as mental illness is often attributed to what is a spiritual condition. But again, with regard to psychiatry, with regard to psychology, when you're in college, when you're not studying, and that's never addressed. And that which are also spiritual gifts, which are gifts of the Holy Spirit, are maliciously, especially with a satanic targeting system, maliciously maligned as mental illness. And this is built into the P.O.C, by the way, criminal defamation. The entity that is engaging in demonic P.O.C, this is the same entity that wanted to falsely depict me, a targeted individual, the ordinary target individual, as a paranoid schizophrenic. And there's nothing paranoid about documenting the fact that helicopters from city to city, county to county are indeed arriving everywhere that you are, that police officers are indeed remaining and following as an entity. Even though it's city to city, it's still following. They're following as a group as opposed to following one demon, such as Jay Burnett is not the one following me from city to city, county to county. The demons that are making up police departments are following where I go, remaining where I go, from county to county, in a very remarkable environment. That which is not the sun, which I've also documented, is remaining over my head. The ability to discern the fact that these are demons in a demonic environment does not equal mental illness such as paranoid schizophrenia. And this is how Satan is using the demon possessed in the state of California and abusing things such as legitimate mental illness issues, such as the demon possessed person in apartment number 55, who is engaging in what is walking back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth with regard to knowledge, demonic knowledge, by the way, as to what I'm doing on a communication device, what I'm doing physically, including speaking to what is a closeted sex offender and an entire stalker, a psychopath that is keeping someone under surveillance while you're in your own apartment, not living your life, obsessed with another person. That is a mentally deranged person. That is mental illness. And it is not paranoid schizophrenia, by the way, to document the P.O.C. and to expose how the P.O.C. looks and what it behaves like. That is criminal defamation. And by the way, Satan wants to falsely depict the spiritual gifts given to the children of the Lord as mental illness. That's called malice. And it's a very specific and intentional agenda by those who serve Satan, by the way. So I just want to make sure that I point that out. But again, staying away from and not even getting into, just as an aside, I wanted to give some relevant context about that. But as with regard to the prosecution, with regard to government, with regard to legislation, with regard to, the separation of church and state, I also advocate these principles. It's very important. It's crucial. But it is for your purposes, for your own information, a lot of the things that will not be addressed, again, the Lord Jesus Christ is intentionally kept out of the conversation. Scripture, the Holy Scriptures are intentionally kept out of the conversation and out of the dialogue. But this is relevant. This is godly wisdom and insight. And these are many answers that are already provided that the Lord has already given us. And they're completely disregarded with regard to this society and in the U.S. And we're purportedly a Christian nation. But at every turn, you're looking at an ongoing real-time agenda to discard anything that has to do remotely with the Lord Jesus Christ. And if he is mentioned, it's in a way that is heresy. In other words, it's speaking to half truths, not in the true light of who Christ is and what his word says and what his word requires, and those how you live your life if you actually know him. Those are the only terms under which, I don't want to say only, but it is very rare that the Lord Jesus Christ and the full truth of who he is and what he requires of those who know him and who actually love him. Scripture speaks on this. So I just want to be clear with regard to mental illness and not getting into the ambiguities of spirit, demon possession and mental illness and each and every person that's claiming, for example, because this is how it can get cloudy. And that's what I'm not going to get into is, in every quote unquote spiritual gift, there are not every spiritual gift is of the light, is from Christ. Satan, you're clearly able to, I'm documenting spirituality, which is group stalking. This is spirituality. Okay, this is demonic activity. Spirituality is group stalking. These are demon possessed people who are operating in dark spirits, monitoring someone else. Okay, this is spirituality while a person is in an apartment building above me, and the light activity, this is exposing what is spiritual at its core. This is opening your eyes to what is surrounding you in the environment. The light source, that is not the sun. You are looking at what is spiritual. It's demonic. Okay, so not everything that is spiritual is a gift from the Lord Jesus Christ. Satan, who is real, who is a spirit, also is operating spiritually. So I want to make sure that I'm clarifying that. Okay, so like I said, it's important with regard to society, with regard to having order and having a civilization, and you don't want Salem witch trials, the separation of church and state. I advocate for that, and there is a place for that. And it's also for the protection of those who I'm thankful for the right that I have to read my Bible and congregate in the true church, not a fake church that's saying, praise God, I love the Lord Jesus Christ. And it's nothing but audible activity under the fake sun and into your light. And they're in that building monitoring those whom they know are actually Holy Spirit filled. That's been my experience. A bunch of demons gathering in a building, having nothing to do with the Lord Jesus. But the freedom that currently exists to gather and worship the Lord and read the Bible and be free to talk about what it is that I want, that's an important right. And it is protected with regard to these policies governing separation of church and state. All right. But and it's also with regard to going off on spiritual tangents, if you will, and then getting back toward archaic notions and issues such as Salem witch trials. This is how you get that. And then you can have what can be very ambiguous, and that's very dangerous with regard to protecting your constitutional rights. And so what I am doing with regard to the pattern of conduct, I'm exposing the reality of the spiritual. When you are focused on the carnal, this is just opening your eyes. We still need to have our constitutional protections. It is a good thing to have separation of church and state. These are good things. It's for our own protection so that we can exercise our freedoms, which are God-given. We don't have them because the government gave them to us, and so that the government can then decide that we don't have them anymore. That's not how that works. But it is speaking to what is the spiritual realities that you are ignorant about. That's what this is about. Okay, so the spiritual is very real, and there's also a dark aspect to that spirituality. And the light source remaining over a property for 12 hours in a day, that's spiritual. And it's dark spirituality. It's demons who live at this property, demons who are stalking in helicopters at this property. You are stalking in the apartment where you're remaining. And this is maliciously occurring as everyday life. And Satan has a full throttle, very highly detailed system of surveillance underway. Okay. It is ordinarily referred to in the vernacular as group stalking. So I'm capturing what are the methods of, what is identifying mental illness. And that's what, again, the entity will be liable for. And AVANATH Communities is a group stalker based on facts, because there's no son that's going to be over AVANATH at 1920 in Irvine, California, 1920 Main Street in Irvine, California. They're in the state of California, and the entity keeping a fake son over me is exposing what the rest of the state of California is necessarily engaged in. Okay. I've also documented that as I'm going from county to county, including driving out of the state into Nevada, showing Nevada engaged in the same exact P.O.C. By the way, that's also how you know that they are demon possessed, group stalking and targeting. And I don't even personally know them, have no relationship with any of those people whatsoever. And they're targeting knowledge of who I am, while that fake sun remained directly over me, remained over the hotel that I remained at, rising in the morning, and remaining over me en route from Nevada. Outright departure from remaining over Woodside Senior Apartments from 7:38 in the morning until 6 p.m. in the evening. And that's how you know what is filling the apartment in apartment number 55, where they are vacuuming, and it is amplified audible activity. This is what you heard on September 19, 2024, reference that podcast. The entity is doing so while it is acting in this, and that's what this is. This is a demon inside of apartment number 55. This demon is acting in sync with the Ontario International Airport. They're maintaining ongoing methods of amplified audible activity, from plane to 55, to train to 55, to traffic to 55, from helicopter to 55, to Tracy Banks, who's in the apartment, just pacing around in the engineer light inside of the apartment on her communication device, which is providing the means of federal stalking. And the people that she's talking to on the phone are group stalking as well, and knowingly. They're knowingly group stalking, and they're doing so alternating with 55. This is just a demon who was literally out of their right mind. You're not in your right mind when you're a demon possessed person. Your mind is literally taken over by Satan, and that is also outwardly demonstrated by the P.O.C. All they are doing is pacing, and they are desperately wanting to hide the fact that they are pacing around one person, that everything that they are doing is focused and fixed on one person. And that is also very revealing regarding your mental illness, to engage in that level of stalking someone, but not wanting it to be known at the same time. But it's also fully known because you're monitoring documentation, and who is it are you fooling at this point? You're not fooling anyone. It's all revealing mental illness. Okay, and so that's what's occupying apartment number 55. And there is a basis for civil recovery and a criminal prosecution for AVANATH. This is a malicious company that is engaged in the pattern of conduct, and that is with regard to the same commercial actors who are acting through very highly unintelligent, low-life demons who don't have anything to lose. That's what this demon in apartment number 55 represents. Okay, over 55 years old, and will not be subject to any retirement, will not be collecting any sort of government benefits, the criminal record that they will walk away with after they sit in federal prison. And if they make it out of federal prison, this is not wishing any ill on them. This is just the reality for the consequences that are before them. And it is the same for the rest of the people of the state who engage in this level of facilitation. Not only are you going to federal prison, you are disqualified based on the criminal record for domestic terrorism. You will not be receiving or qualified for any government funds such as Section 8, such as low-income housing that this demon in apartment 55 is currently relying on while they're engaging in state surveillance. It is literally the demonstration of your disqualification for it. And these federal housing programs are under no circumstances going to be cooperating where properties are engaging in, just like AVANATH Communities, Woodside Senior Apartments is a documented group stalker. You are thereby going to be disqualified from participating in things such as low-income housing, Section 8 housing, federal housing such as Alvarado Gardens was engaged in. And this is based on the P.O.C. This is all the ways in which the people of the state will be civilly and criminally prosecuted as you are engaged in the pattern of conduct. And when you have demons such as the one that's in 55, who is literally a mentally deranged psychopath that is literally walking back and forth inside of an apartment, stalking someone else, and doing so and increasing in that the more that they are listening to the truth being spoken about them, which again is also judgment that they have heaped on their own head, engaging in this criminal system. And the entity is also monitoring and witnessing its own exposure and demise. It is literally watching its criminal conviction come toward it while it sought to target someone else. Now they are being targeted with their own evidence, and that's just the providence of serving the Lord Jesus Christ. That's really just something that is reaping from what the entity has been engaging in for years. And that literally includes Woodside Senior Apartments. They are documented terrorists and for years engaging in criminal summoning, engaged in terrorists with the OPD, engaged in what is harassment, engaged in this system of federal stalking as well for years. And so this is a long time coming. And the entity, 144 units are documented engaging in this P.O.C. And being over the age of 55 is no exception to the way in which you will be prosecuted under federal law. So I just want to speak to this criminal conduct it's shared by the Ontario International Airport, and the entity that is engaging what is amplification of audible activity, which is demonic, the sensational activity, which is also occurring with this apartment building, which is impossible. There have been no earthquakes, and nor does the earthquake result when you are flying over in helicopter, doing so both at a great distance and when you're flying directly over the building, it's demonic. And also no earthquake conduct and no sensational activity, no sounding as though it is an earthquake when you're walking in the apartment building. And relevant context is this is the property where the fake sun is rising and setting, and that is again. This is indeed a demon-possessed person who is, again, adding toward the damages that AVANATH Capital Management, LLC, will compensate me for in the same way that every other commercial actor, the people of the state in the state of California, have been engaged in for years, profiting while acting in furtherance of the state's conspiracy to murder and kidnap me while keeping me under surveillance, criminally, group stalking with the people. Because there's no other purpose, by the way, to engage in group stalking. And the entity has been engaged in an ongoing demonic effort to sacrifice me. That's what the demonic system of group stalking is about. That's the purpose of it. And they also engage in what is seeking to criminally defame you in order to kidnap you. The demons that are stalking in helicopters, those are the same demons that don't have any probable cause or reasonable suspicion to engage in pulling me over or talking to me or detaining me, let alone the people of the state who are group stalking with them. They're masquerading as having authority under the law. That's the same with the courts. And they're group stalking with the demons such as the one in 55. Those are the demons that they're pulling over, and they're engaged in criminal summoning together. They're engaging in what is criminal summoning by picking these demons up and putting them in ambulances while they're group stalking the targeted individual. And so this is the pattern of conduct that shows high malice, in other words. And the entity that is, again, AVANATH Capital Management, LLC. I've documented on the document that is referred to as WSA-the people. This is, again, Woodside Senior Apartments and AVANATH Communities is simultaneously being documented. Woodside Senior Apartments is going to be subject to a criminal prosecution. They don't own the property. They're living on the property, which is a facilitating venue. AVANATH Communities owns the property, and where the entity is provided a place for this criminal conspiracy to occur, you will be held accountable for it. There is no exception stating you don't know about the fact that you're that this gang stalking is happening on your real property is not an excuse. First of all, because the threat to the life of a targeted individual supersedes any claim that is unreasonable in the specific environment, amongst the population, amongst your employees who are engaged in that criminal conduct, which you will be liable for, amongst the criminal conduct by the vendors that you have contracts with who are engaging in that criminal conduct, which you will be liable for, amongst the state that's using planes and helicopters over your property. Okay, which you shall be liable for. So this is changing the landscape because the state of California, because the states are engaged in this system. This is creating an onus on the entity, these companies, the people of the state. If you don't want to be prosecuted as a group stalker, facilitating it in any way, then you are thereby there's creating an obligation because you will be civilly and criminally held liable. And this is justice based on the malice of the system. AVANATH Capital Management is a group stalker that's in Irvine, California. And all I have to do is drive to 1920 Main Street and show you the fake sun over my head. And I don't have to do that because I've already established the P.O.C. They are a group stalker. Their corporate headquarters is in California and Orange County, where I literally have been subject to the P.O.C. They're a group stalker, and their property in Ontario is where the pattern of conduct in a way, and their demon-possessed resident is costing them money, and they're going to compensate me. In fact, I'm going to drain their pockets. While this terrorism, as I'm continuously documenting on the document called the WSA-the People, and so it is as minute, as detailed, as specific as I touch my phone screen, the demon begins pacing in the living room, which again is something that is not going to be heard. It's not going to interrupt your sleep. It's not going to be heard while you're wearing headphones, tuning out the sound, but that's what's occurring. That's understanding how a demon is targeting. Okay, that's not the audible activity. It doesn't matter if this demon possessed person is 775 pounds, which is what the entity is doing, no matter what hotel, no matter what apartment, no matter where it is that I'm going. They all sound as though they're all 775 pounds, like they're all dropping bowling balls while they're in a room above my head. They're all sounding as though they are like the Hulk, walking in the hallways, walking outside. They all sound as though they are landing the helicopter on the building while you're obviously stalking under the fake sun, which is an admission against the state and the people of the state. These are the idiots stalking under the fake sun. And this is how that whole P.O.C. works together. AVANATH Capital Management LLC is indeed a group stalker. Not only based on the fact that they are in a facilitating venue in the state of California, I'm going to drain their pockets specifically because I have the ability to do so while I'm subject to this attempt on my life by the state on their real property. Okay, so the entity is doing so with knowledge. Federal stalking is also what AVANATH Communities is engaged in. That's what the entire state of California is engaged in. And their real property is where this criminal system is underway. And the demon that's engaged in federal stalking, living in apartment number 55, alternating with the Ontario International Airport, alternating with the Ontario Police Department, alternating with the demons that are group stalking, coming on to Woodside Senior Apartments to group stalk, and living at the property, engaging in business with AVANATH Communities to group stalk. Yes, you are going to be held civilly and criminally liable for that, which is justice. It's also supported by the evidence. Okay, so I just want to make sure that I document this, and some of the things that I'm documenting, which again, I pointed out, 1:08 a.m. I'm touching my phone. So the demon begins pacing. And this is occurring again in concert with the people of the state. The 7-Eleven located at 636 North Vine Avenue is simultaneously being documented for the ongoing methods of amplified audible activity, sensational activity of this apartment building that I'm inside of, which is occurring by the Ontario Police, the Ontario International Airport, the Union Pacific Railroad tracks, whatever Satan serving train line is actually on the tracks as the entity sounds train activity, because it does not require an actual train, but because the entity, it's already a documented P.O.C. I documented this very heavily because the entity employs amplified audible activity reminiscent of the sound of a train. You will be prosecuted, and it will become relevant what is actually the train station and who was using it, because you're going to be prosecuted for it. By the way, Metrolink is the documented group stalker, and so is Amtrak. Just putting that out there. So nonetheless, and so is Union Pacific. Nonetheless, it is not even necessary for those train lines who are engaged in state surveillance, their group stalkers, to actually even be on the train, because this is demonic at its core. The pattern of conduct has shown that the entity is employing the supernatural, the demonic, to falsely depict the targeted individual that does not have the P.O.C., the body of evidence, and would like to falsely depict them, that is, criminally defame them, as paranoid, schizophrenic, bipolar, hallucinating. This is, again, the malicious actor that is the state that is seeking to murder and kidnap an American citizen whom it is keeping under surveillance while they serve Satan. Okay, and so this is what an entity is doing on an ongoing basis, and doing so while they are openly exhibiting mental illness. The fact that you are being group stalked by a mentally ill, demon-possessed group stalker that is representing the entity inside of the apartment building that AVANATH Communities owns, that is speaking to the level of damages that you're going to be subject to and the threat to your life. A mentally unstable entity that's tracking your steps, which is shown through the fake sun. It's shown through the impossible light activity, the fact that they're tracking your steps and know who you are and know where you're going. That is the evidence that is speaking to a threat to your life, which you're going to quantify. And AVANATH Communities, AVANATH Capital Management LLC, again, their pockets will be drained for that. While you cannot quantify the threat that is posed, you can't quantify a life that is under threat by an entity group stalking. You will be subject to what is civil damages assigned to you while you are engaging in that. And the entity is doing it on an ongoing basis. This is a demon at 137. Okay, I just want to be clear. This is a psychopath that knows that they're being documented, and there is no walking or anything that you're doing that's going to create the sound of the cracking of a wall and the sound of a ceiling. All right, this is amplified audible activity, and the pattern of conduct is pre-existing my coming to the Woodside Senior Apartments. This is clearly the highly unintelligent method of maintaining some sort of source of noise. It's very loud noise, even if it's occurring in a highly unrealistic manner. And so the entity is doing so. Again, I want to be clear, quiet enjoyment is relevant with regard to the apartment complexes that engage in the pattern of conduct. This is exactly what I documented at Woodside Senior Apartments. And so I want to be clear, when it is a contractual basis of your leases, quiet enjoyment, it's also based on the fact that because you're walking in your apartment, it's not going to be this level of disruption. This is a demon. This is amplification. Amplification speaks to intent. Amplification is demonic. Therefore, you are intentionally engaging what are elements of monitoring a demon who was group stalking you as an entity. Okay, this is speaking to, again, the P.O.C, where the entity is maintaining alternating methods of amplification and showing the mental illness of the entire entity, not just the sex offender that's living in apartment 55 at Woodside Senior, who is going to federal prison and who will never escape the criminal record that will, from the point of that prosecution and their time in federal prison, they won't be living off of any federal housing benefits. Okay, they will be disqualified. And this is demonstrating why it is necessary. Okay, this is speaking to disqualification from federal housing. This is speaking to a necessity of being listed as a domestic terrorist in order to be barred from living around people whom you are keeping under surveillance. You're threatening their lives. You're invading their privacy. You're intending to psychologically harm them for no legitimate purpose whatsoever. All of this is built into the P.O.C that the entity is engaging in for no purpose whatsoever. You're conspiring to murder and kidnap someone that you're living above. While I am at this apartment complex and you're hearing the audible activity of Tracy Banks, who was a group stalker under the fake sun, at 2:00 in the afternoon, pray tell, what is over Alvarado Gardens at 2:00 in the afternoon when I'm at work at my leasing office, when I'm inside of my apartment and the fake sun is still over my front door and I'm facing the hillside? It's not the sun. Okay, that is audible activity coming out of the mouth of a demon whose name I know, Tracy Banks, and the demon whose name I don't have to know. There at my Woodside Senior Apartments, this is how you are, again, deterring state surveillance by the people and the government. You're talking about federal prison for all aspects of that P.O.C acting with the state directly that likes to use police, fire, and ambulance and helicopters. You're going to federal prison. You like to pose an impermissible threat. Federal stalking while you're monitoring evidence. You're going to federal prison. Many routes lead to federal prison, but you are talking about what is deportation upon federal prosecution for those that are not natural born citizens who have been granted naturalization. You're talking about what is having a criminal record as a terrorist in the U.S. You will be listed as a domestic terrorist so that the DOJ and everybody else in this country will know who you are, and you cannot just go get a job anywhere you want. You can't just get any job in any industry any longer just because you have the education requirements or the education or the background, the professional background experience. That's not enough, and that criminal record will be a necessary and beneficial obstacle to keep such psychopaths who pose a very real threat of walking into that workplace and shooting everyone because of the mental illness that they are secretly suffering from, while I'm showing you the P.O.C of a group stalker living at an apartment complex, group stalking me, exhibiting the fact that they're demon possessed. This is, again, benefiting the public in many ways, exposing what Satan is doing amongst the government and a population in the state of California. When they are listed as domestic terrorists, when they are listed as and understood to be the mentally ill, and the entity is exposed, all of that is exposed. When they're listed as domestic terrorists, you know that the demon possessed are mentally ill. So you know, for your own benefit, your own life, your own well-being, your own safety, to walk accordingly in that wisdom that you have, that you are being made aware of. Because you know what's wrong with the group stalkers. These are demon-possessed group stalkers. These are closeted psychopaths, closeted sex offenders. All right. And they pose a threat to the public and themselves. Okay. But that's not just on the fact that you know that they're demons, but it's also based on the fact that they're literally documented terrorists. And that's exactly how they're going to be treated. All right. And labeled accordingly while they are walking around now. And those that are vulnerable, but again, the demon possessed are walking amongst each other, group stalking, an American citizen like myself. But you're talking about moving outside of the state. You're talking about being exposed for the criminal conduct that they've that the entity has been engaged in, removing them from law enforcement, removing them from the medical field, removing them from the legal profession, removing them from areas in society such as being able to have a pilot license. These sort of industries, these trades, these are areas where federal group stalking and monitoring becomes relevant, and you will have to go through a necessary federal check in order to access these areas. As I'm documenting the P.O.C. Okay, this is how you have demons stalking over a senior citizen complex. I'm literally documenting this, and so let me go over. This is what I was going to point out. At the Ontario International Airport at 12:16 in the morning, and 12:14 in the morning, amplified plane activity. First of all, this is a necessary deviation from anywhere from Terminal 2 or Terminal 4 of the Ontario International Airport. Okay, while you're flying over the senior citizen complex, which again, a public nuisance zoning with regard to hovering over a senior citizen complex, taking off from the Ontario International Airport from any direction, even if it will include flying they're not flying in a direction that is, they're flying west over the Woodside Senior Apartments, not from a vantage point taking off from the Ontario International Airport, which would be in a direction actually, which would be more akin to not west over the apartment complex, but it would be more because there's such a grand deviation. If you look at the map, Terminal 2 and 4 from the Ontario International Airport to all the way over to Woodside Senior Apartments, where they're hovering at a low elevation. Okay. And then engaging in what's supposed to look at your eyes. Oh, they're taking off. But all you're doing is using your common sense. You're not taking off from some terminal that's over here at the Woodside Senior Apartments. The Ontario International Airport is far away. They would already be at a point where you would not hear it, and certainly not going to be hovering over the apartment complex. This is targeting by virtue of that conduct, and it's a pattern of conduct. Not only that, the direction that they're flying with regard to from the Ontario International Airport, they're flying west, and from that. I suppose you could come from a direction where you're flying directly, what would be from the Ontario International Airport. That would be the direction north, and then just to make a turn to fly west, specifically over the Ontario International Airport. But nonetheless, they're flying in a direction that is not in some perfect line where they're flying in a direction west over Woodside Senior Apartments when they're coming from the Ontario International Airport. All right. The Woodside Senior Apartments is it's like northwest from the direction where the Ontario International Airport is. There's a far deviation from Terminal 2 and 4 for what the Ontario International Airport is going. It's clearly, and you can see that on the map. Their airline arrivals and departures have nothing to do with what I'm documenting at 12, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. The entity is engaging what is using commercial airline planes. The entity can try to first of all, it's the P.O.C. The entity stalked my planes and helicopters, but I'm exposing this demon, Alan D. WAPNER, this is a demon possessed person who's also his public corruption that's happening on his watch. He's not only sitting on the Ontario City Council, he is also the president of the Ontario International Airport, where a demonic pattern of conduct is underway. It's a very specific and unique pattern of conduct, which the demon possessed are engaging in and not reporting it and acting in conformity to it. This is how you have that unique behavioral pattern, that unique demonic environment that's occurring. This is a whole population of demons. You don't have an ongoing coincidence of this unique level happening ignorantly or coincidentally. It's impossible. It's a very specific system that Alan D. WAPNER knows all about. He's not only the president over the Ontario International Airport, which while I'm capturing commercial airline planes, and as I've captured it for years, because they're doing the same thing as though they're taking off over the senior citizen apartment complex at the adjacent to the 280 North Limit Apartments. That's where they're hovering over, while I'm sitting at the side of the Ovid Family Community Library, where the entity is documenting keeping a fake son. This is so unintelligent what the entity has done. It's already on the record, video after video for a term of years. And then I relocated to LA. Okay. And then I went to Nevada, San Diego, Costa Mesa, Bakersfield, and I'm showing you the P.O.C. I documented this already what the entity is doing with commercial airline planes, keeping a fake sun at the Ovid Family Community Library all day long. And that's where the entity is hovering over the 280 North Lemon Apartments, which is, again, where the fake sun was present. That's how you're identifying targeting by the Ontario International Airport using commercial airline planes. That's the necessity of the federal check, keeping domestic terrorists, and you will be documented as a terrorist. While the airport's operation are used to engage in the elements of monitoring, you're a demon-possessed entity using airports to maintain elements of monitoring. That's a whole unfathomable level of psychotic behavior. Lying in wait conduct using planes. You're in a location, you're in a position to, at the drop of a dime, sound plane activity with simultaneity to what I do as I do it. Very demonic. This is what they're doing using commercial airline planes, alternating with the demon inside of apartment number 55. Yes, it goes back to what AVANATH Capital Management LLC will be civilly and criminally liable for. By the way, quiet enjoyment, nuisance laws. These are things that, again, while the entity is amplifying plane and helicopter activity, and the demon that's, again, would like to state, what are you doing? Cartwheels at 1 and 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning? Are you 892 pounds? Are you dribbling a bowling ball? All right. Obviously, that's impossible. I'm using that sort of those descriptive terms with regard to what is it that you're doing at that early hour. And I'm documenting this on an ongoing basis based on what I'm doing. Understand, impossible light activity fills the apartment that I'm inside of. Context. The fake sun is rising and setting at this apartment complex. It's not going anywhere. It's not starting off in Nevada and then arriving at 7:38 in alignment with my physical position at Woodside Senior Apartments. No, and then being in a position where I could also see it at the same time at 7:49 at Courtyard by Marriott, at the Dean Martin Courtyard by Marriott in Las Vegas, Nevada. No, that's not happening at the same time. No, it's not. And the entity kept the fake sun over me in Nevada en route to California. And I am in California at Woodside Senior Apartments, and the fake sun is rising at Woodside Senior Apartments and setting while I'm at the same property. All I'm doing is looking to my right, and that light source is still there. 10 hours later, it takes 10 hours to go over this apartment complex. It's never in Las Vegas, Nevada, based on what the entity is doing. It's never over Alvarado Gardens. There's only one sun, however. So what is it that I already documented remaining over me, rising and setting at Alvarado Gardens? What is it that's over me, seen through my hotel window, supposedly the sunlight that's all over inside of my hotel room in San Diego, while I'm looking at the light source from morning, afternoon, into evening, while the entity is crossing path in planes in that environment and crossing path and flying over in helicopters. This is the P.O.C. and this is the civil and criminal prosecution of AVANATH Communities. That is AVANATH Capital Management LLC, who is a group stalker. Corporate headquarters is in Irvine. The one sun is documented remaining over me. Now, my encounter with AVANATH Capital Management LLC is by providence because their property is where they're engaging in what is threatening my life and with the state, conspiring to murder and kidnap me, group stalking, and you're making money. I'm going to drain your pockets and I'm going to criminally prosecute you. You're a corrupt business, maliciously engaged in the P.O.C., and you are not ignorant about it while you're in the same state and the environment where a fake sun is necessarily anywhere in Irvine over you. This is a malicious system that the entire state is engaged in. While an idiot that has nothing to lose is causing more federal time in prison for the whole entity. Again, speaking to more damages for the whole entity while they're engaging in what is exhibiting their mental illness, pacing back and forth in the living room. That's not going to cause shaking and vibrating and cracking of the ceiling and the walls. Doing so at the same time that I stroke my phone screen, the same time that I go from one room to the kitchen to the bathroom. Stalking me literally as I go from room to room, a demon that knows what I'm doing physically and knows what I'm doing on a communication device. That's the P.O.C. It's demonic activity, and that is spiritual, by the way. All I'm doing is pointing out to you what you are disregarding in everyday life. And this is not to create what is a sense of fear. It's to open your eyes regarding your enemy, the enemy of your soul, Satan, who is a spirit. He is real, and you can be made aware of it looking at the demonic imitation of the natural environment that surrounds you. Because while it's remaining over me at yet again another venue, Woodside Senior Apartments, It's not over you. There's only one sun, not 14. And also, by the way, it doesn't take a rocket science to recognize we've been told something erroneous about the environment and about climate change and the cause for the annual fires in California, but based on the global warming and these sorts of things. It's not even the natural environment. The sun is not isolated in the universe over Woodside Senior Apartments. At least that's not what we were told in the 5th grade. Okay? This is very common sense. And it's also spiritual. And that's all I'm getting to. Now, the entity is engaged in this conduct, and I want to make sure that I wanted to expound on that discussion. And this is what, again, the entity is acting via the demon-possessed, mentally ill, closeted psychopath and sex offender, a domestic terrorist who was occupying a facilitating venue in apartment number 55 at Woodside Senior Apartments, and doing so with knowledge while engaged in federal stalking, acting with impunity, increasing the threat to my life. While you're stalking with audible activity, it's a threat to my life. It's monitoring. This is what these highly unintelligent idiots stalking under fake sun and in engineer light do not understand. And if they do understand it, they're showing their mental illness, because no sane person would add time to federal prison, would add time to would add on to the heavy exposure that these police departments, these sheriff's departments, these fire departments, this population is going to be under. When this is worldwide news, no sane person would do that, as though we're sitting in time and that there will never be any advancement beyond this moment, that you're never going to be held accountable for what is not a secret. Who in their right mind does that? No one in their right mind does that. They are being used by Satan. And when they face these consequences, and the devil made me do it is not an excuse, but I want to be clear, the demon possessed will not admit it. Many of them don't even know it. Oh, but they know what they're doing, though. They're acting of their own volition, but they don't know. Many of them don't even know that they're demon possessed. But they're not even going to admit that. They can't even face that reality. But that's the truth. It's the truth. I was going to say it's a fact, and it is a fact. But this is the truth with regard to that's what is this system. The system is a dark spirituality. It's demonic activity. And it's also in a demonic environment. And you can readily identify it. You can see it with your own eyes. And you're understanding what is an intentional means to condition you, to deceive you with regard to what this government knows is no global warming, climate change. This is not even the natural environment. What is over in Northern California, the cause of the fires in Northern California that they need federal funds for, and the fake suns remaining over Woodside Senior Apartments all day long. So what is it that there is actually the cause of those fires in Northern California? Just as an example, the fake suns remaining over Woodside. It's not over anywhere in Northern California while it's remaining over me in alignment with my person at a senior citizen apartment complex for 10 to 12 hours in the day. That's intentional with regard to deceiving you. The enemy of your soul doesn't want you to be aware of his reality, of his existence, of his focus on you, of his intention to deceive you. And like he is with this entity, use you up. And then when you answer the consequences for because you will be held accountable for what it is that you do and for the decisions that you make, he's going to laugh at you when he's done using you and go on to the next vessel. He's not going to help you. He's not going to help these demons. They're going to be prosecuted. They're going to federal prison, and they're going to sit up and think about all the ways in which they were told far before it happened to them what was going to happen to them. All right, so I just want to make sure that I'm documenting it. This is establishing, again, under systematic infliction of inhumane suffering, SIIS. This is federal legislation that I advocate, and I've been speaking about this for years as I've been documenting the P.O.C. on my podcast and my video documentation, much of it from 2019 to 2022 regarding federal legislation, much of which does not exist. But again, analogous to tortious law, but this exceeds tortious conduct. And a lot of the obstacles to being held accountable under civil law don't apply because this is criminal conduct that the government is engaging in maliciously with the constituents of the state. So you do not have some sort of excuse from, I'm not going to be held liable for what the criminal conduct of a vendor on my property is engaging in. Yes, you will, because this is the state's P.O.C. and you're the same entity. You're the people of the state and you're acting together. So the whole illusion of that, that person is separate from me. You're not individuals in the specific environment. You're an entity And that is also already supported. They're already surrounded by a cycle of evidence showing that it is an entity acting as opposed to individuals engaging in just ongoing randomness. They're all under the fake sun. You're one entity group stalking together. And since you're making money while doing it, I'm going to drain your pockets. This is speaking to, again, the ways in which you're going to deter this system under civil law and under criminal law. And it's also speaking to the ways in which you will be held criminally accountable for what an entity is doing directly and through that, maliciously through the people of the state. All right. So this is, again, changing the landscape because the government is engaging in surveillance in the U.S. Okay. Headline news. Since that is the case, this is a fact. All right. This changes the landscape and it changes responsibilities of property owners, company owners, the people of the state, and all the ways in which it's not a secret how group stalking, how state surveillance is underway. And if you don't want to be held accountable, the only way that you can avoid that is by literally removing yourself. And if that means federal prison or keeping your job, let me be clear, you're not even going to keep your job when you're prosecuted for arriving to work, engaging in the elements of monitoring with the state. So you either save yourself at that point if you're not a demon-possessed psychopath, literally giving off everything to Satan, who is not giving you anything in return and is going to laugh at you when you suffer the consequences for it. He's the enemy of your soul. You are a puppet. You are being used. This is spiritual in nature, and it's also criminal. All right. He's using you up like an uncompensated whore. Okay. Prostitute that's not going to be paid for her services. That's what Satan is doing amongst the entity. So the entity is doing so, and you will be held accountable for it. This is teaching the rest of the country the decisions, the hard decisions that you're going to make, because this is not a secret system. This is changing the landscape, and this is also creating obligations, responsibilities. You will be held accountable for it. You are actually responsible for that which is no longer a secret society. It's not a secret system. And all the ways in which this system operates, it's speaking to all the ways in which you will be held and accountable under civil and criminal law. And so this nincompoop in number 55 is engaging in conduct on behalf of the whole entity, which the entity, again, they're a bunch of psychopaths, and none of them engage in any sense like, maybe you should tinker. They are obsessively engaging in the elements of monitoring. Remember, group stalking is stalking. It's born of obsession. That obsession is shown through the ongoing criminal activity that at this point, it's to your own demise. You're not hurting the target individual who's prosecuting you. You're hurting yourself. Their obsession is thereby exposed. You're under a fake sun every day. Every day. And by the way, there's a whole body of evidence before I arrived at Woodside Senior Apartments that preceded what you are doing, stalking under a fake sun that's remaining over your property. Every day, all day. This is highly unintelligent and unprofitable criminal activity for which the entity will be civilly liable for. All right, so I just want to make sure that I give that discussion. This is speaking to, again, the psychopath is engaging in more conduct. That's the mental illness of the entity. That's the real-time effect of demon possession also. Okay, relevant information regarding demon possession. The threat, the personality defect, the type of behaviors is referred to in the secular as narcissistic behaviors, that pride and that ego. You're dealing with a spirit, okay? And that's also a delusional psychopath because you're actually engaging in criminal activity and you're monitoring the evidence while it is being in real time gathered. It's actually going to a court to be used against you. I don't know how much it never ceases to amaze me, not the system, because clearly this is not, it just took the Lord using someone who was willing, okay? One who the Lord has called to serve him and expose this and speak to what it is that he wants to say. But in doing so, this is not, there is nothing amazing or sophisticated, I've said it so many times, or profound or intricate or elite about the P.O.C. It's not. It is on its face idiotic conduct, very unintelligent. Any person, which is a threat to your life also, any person off the street, okay? Any person off digging in any dumpster or working for any law firm, police department, a registered nurse. That's speaking of malice. Because in your mind, you have all these sorts of preconceived notions about people that have certain backgrounds and look a certain way and do things for the homeless person that's digging in the dumpster, or the gangbanger that's just got out of jail versus the registered nurse that works at the community hospital. And what you need to know is that they're all under the fake sun in California, group stalking together, same demon possession, same malice, same threat to the life of the targeted individual. And this is speaking to, again, the spiritual. And this is not just pointing out and just name calling and just pick. This is based on evidence that everybody can look at and observe together, tangible evidence and a body of it. Long-term years of evidence speaking to a pattern of conduct that supports every statement that I have made. Everything. Because it's not just about what you know, it's what you can prove with regard to a prosecution. And it's also about making clear so that you can understand, you who are listening, you who have an ear to hear and eyes to see what it is that the Lord is saying. That's why. That's also the purpose of the evidence regarding the demonic, regarding the reality of Satan. Okay. And again, with regard to, you're not focusing on Satan. He's not God. He's certainly not all knowing. Okay, you have a band of clowns who are being surrounded with the evidence, trying to murder and kidnap people out here in California. And it turns out the bully that is the state of California, it's not even the most intelligent organization of a criminal enterprise to exist. It's not at all. The fake sun, the engineer light, multiple shadows. You can look at, again, a fifth grader can look at that based on basic understanding of how light works. And the light bulb over your head does not create shadows above your head. Okay, the entity is engaging in what is clearly unintelligent, and it's demonic. That's what it is. It's demonic. That's what fills the apartment above my head. And engaging in more harassment and terrorism as an entity, a mentally ill and delusional psychopath whose costly and criminal activity is attributed to the whole state, the entire state. And do not miss that. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure I went into that. And it's currently 2:05 a.m. on September 25th, 2024. And this 24-hour amplification of audible activity is speaking to, again, the demon possessed aren't sleeping. They are listening to me breathe. They're engaging in, as I documented the other day, the moment that I wake up, the vibration of the apartment, the amplification of helicopter, the demon that is Tracy Banks crossing path by walking into her kitchen while the fake sun is over the apartment complex. Those demons are listening to me breathe. They know when you're conscious and unconscious. They know when you're touching your phone screen, when you're turning on your laptop, when you're pulling your panties down. They know who it is that you're sleeping with. If you're sleeping with anyone, I'm giving you details. What is it that I'm speaking to? They know everything. Satan is intimately concerned with everything that's going on in your life. In other words, everything. And you actually, with regard to the Republic, the United States, this constitutional system that we're supposed to have privacy, that's an illusion. The government is keeping us under surveillance. And I happen to be targeted while this surveillance system that is demonic is underway. And you are aware of all of that as I have documented the P.O.C, as I've termed it, the pattern of conduct. All right, it is currently, again, 2:06 a.m. on Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. And this is P.O.C. All right, documenting at 2:12 a.m. amplification of a louder volume. This is speaking to the demonic. All right. This is nothing other than demonic when you're using a means of aerial surveillance. It's planes and helicopters built into the P.O.C. And it's also with regard to Alan D. WAPNER. This is a group stalker criminally facilitating state surveillance of a retaliatory nature, threatening my life, engaging in what is criminal surveillance. Federal stalking is also built in while this retaliatory conduct, and it is reasonably construed from what is the louder amplification. Okay. It's already amplified in volume at 2 o'clock in the morning. Commercial airline planes are the means of pacing in the sky space over in relevant position, doing so in engineered light, the upright shadows that you've seen, multiple upright shadows on the property, amplified audible activity, and doing so while the people of the state are, and the plane activity itself is the means of monitoring. And at 2:12, the plane activity is getting louder. So I want to make sure that I'm documenting that. Again, this is what Alan D. WAPNER, this is also a demon. This is a corrupt government actor who is engaged in public surveillance. The fake sun is also documented over that city of Ontario City Council building, which is adjacent to the Ontario International Airport. I want to make sure that I document that at 2:12 a.m. This is, again, when you're analyzing the demonic P.O.C., when you are relevant to what is federal stalking, the entity is engaging in what is a P.O.C., engaging in more of that demonic behavior, which is on its face, the pattern of conduct, and then doing so with real-time knowledge of the fact that it's being documented. It will be prosecuted as the criminal acts of obstruction of justice that's intended to retaliate, intimidate, threaten you while you are exposing, blowing the whistle on the state that's keeping you under surveillance. And it's also posing an impermissible threat. And so I just want to make sure that I'm documenting that. This is at 2:12 and 2:13 a.m. The entity is engaging in what is demonic pacing, and I'm documenting this on an ongoing basis. Again, the Ontario International Airport, using commercial airline planes, Southwest Airlines, Delta Airlines, Alaska Airlines, Amazon Prime, FedEx, UPS uses their commercial airline planes. All of the airlines, in other words, are engaged in federal stalking and state surveillance as they are affiliated with the Ontario International Airport. The entity is using commercial airline planes to fly in relevant position to engage in the elements of monitoring state surveillance. They also do so with the criminal intent to obstruct justice, communicating threats to physically harm you while your group stalking with the state. You're acting in furtherance of the conspiracy to murder and kidnap someone. Okay. Now the fact that the entity has failed in its endeavor, its purpose to kidnap and murder me, I am, contrary to what it anticipated, prosecuting it. It is no less that criminal conspiracy to murder and kidnap someone while your group stalking them. And that's what the Ontario International Airport, Alan D. WAPNER, is fully engaged in, both on the City of Ontario City Council and the president of a corrupt airport that's engaged in state surveillance under a fake sun that at no time is sharing any sky space with the Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas, Nevada, while the fake sun was over me in Las Vegas, Nevada, en route to Las Vegas, Nevada, and back to California, the entire route. That's speaking to what is surveillance using the airports throughout the state of California. And also, as I cross state lines of the entity, maintain that same aerial surveillance in Nevada, while the fake sun that's providing the context as opposed to the ordinary business of an airport. They're engaged in state surveillance while the specific environment is present. And the entity is doing so at 2:12 and 2:13 a.m. and with a louder amplified audible activity, communicating a threat with the intent to threaten my life, to intimidate, to psychologically torture while they're engaged in federal stalking and aware of everything that I am documenting about it. That's exactly what's exhibited by the demon in apartment number 55, who gets louder, who engages in more of that conduct of what is amplified audible activity as though they're 775 pounds while they're walking. And they're doing so with simultaneity to what I do on my phone, on my laptop, physically in the apartment, stalking from room to room, which is heard through the amplified audible activity as I go from room to room. This is what the entity is doing from place to place in airplanes, concentrating amplified plane activity, hovering over, by the way, a senior citizen complex at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning in the specific environment, which is also that which would be a violation of quiet enjoyment. This is a contractual provision of the people of the state that live at this apartment complex, and they're not going to be subject to quiet enjoyment rights while they are expecting planes to hover over their apartment complex 24 hours a day, necessarily interfering with quiet enjoyment. The same with the plane and the helicopter activity. The people of the state aren't complaining because they're demon-possessed group stalkers, okay? And this is the shared condition in the criminal system everywhere that I'm going. It is currently 2:17 a.m. I just want to document that act of retaliation that's relevant to damages. Not only AVANATH communities, but the Ontario International Airport and the state of California will be civilly and criminally prosecuted. Okay. And government actors, corrupt government actors such as Alan D. WAPNER, they are facing a countdown until they are permanently plucked out of the positions that they hold, where they are engaged in state surveillance, serving Satan in doing so, and posing a threat to American citizens while they are currently in the positions that they hold, where this criminal conduct, this public corruption is thriving under their corrupt and dangerous leadership. All right. It's currently 2:17 a.m. That's P.O.C. Erica Lorraine Spencer here. The following is an audio version of video evidence that is captured for purposes of mass distribution, which is why I am capturing it and sharing it on the podcast for evidentiary purposes, and also to reveal the wealth of documentation that extends beyond what it is that I document on podcasts. Much of the video and images will be published onto the YouTube channel, the P.O.C., and it is also shared on the Google Drive Again, this is for purposes of revealing what I remain subject to, which is federal group stalking and monitoring. It is a demonic system of state surveillance that the government is practicing in concert with the people of the state. And it should be known and well understood that for the government to engage in federal group stalking and monitoring, this is a crime that is committed with a criminal purpose to threaten the life of an American citizen. This is to conspire to murder and or permanently kidnap an American citizen while engaging in a perpetual sex offense in concert with the people of the state. Okay, that's a commercial airline plane taking right off over the apartment complex. So you can see that. That's P.O.C. And it is, again, while the entity is aware of the evidence that's being, they're currently monitoring the podcast that's being uploaded to the Google Drive. So they're not only engaged in state surveillance, they're also engaged in federal stalking with a criminal intent to intimidate, retaliate, and threaten the life of an American citizen whom an airport is clearly deviating from the Ontario International Airport Terminal 1 or 2 while they're hovering also over this senior citizen complex after 2 o'clock in the morning, in conformity to a pattern of conduct, by the way. And they're doing so while engineer light is covering the property. None of these lights cause multiple upright shadows, and they're also doing it while engineer light remains inside of the apartment. That's P.O.C. All right, documenting what is the evidence of, again, not only state surveillance, but also federal stalking with the criminal purpose to, this is the pattern of conduct, the mental illness of the demon possessed. These are actually demon possessed people who are stalking using commercial airline planes. It is as psychotic, and these are people that literally are possessed by Satan, because this is the highly deranged and high level malice and criminal conduct by the entity that's stalking, and also helicopters. This is what police departments are devoting their heliport to. The police department operations centered on stalking one person as a department. Okay. This is what the entity is using commercial airline planes for. And so while I captured the Audible podcast speaking to the entity that was stalking in a plane, I captured video moments later. And as I then upload that, let me let you listen to this. It's heard inside of the apartment. This is P.O.C. And again, the entity is rising in volume. This is evidence of what is crossing path and taking off. Again, while I'm sleeping in the vehicle on Vine and Avenue and G Street, you will see the positioning of where the entity concentrates its plane activity. And it is in a position that is always on my on Fern Avenue and G Street. The entity is stalking with the planes, maintaining presence on what is the east side of my person. And so since I'm not on Fern Avenue and G Street in the vehicle, the entity is east side of my person while I'm inside of apartment 51, and they're hovering right over the Woodside Senior Apartments. And this is amplified in volume. So this is loud plane activity that is heard. And they're also doing, that's the evidence that's already on the record. And this is, again, when I'm at the Ovid Family Community Library, they're on the east side of my person hovering over the 280 North Lemon Apartments. They're doing that while the fake sun is over that property and remaining over me over the side. Not the front of the library. When I'm sitting at the side of the library, the fake sun's over the side of the library, and the entity is flying over the side to the east, to the left of my person, over the 280 North Lemon Apartments, while the fake sun stayed there and set there. By setting, I mean the fake sun stayed there all day, and that's where the sun set. As long as I was there, that's where the entity kept the fake sun. When I'm sitting at, again, the same plaza, but different physical location at the same plaza, for example, the Ontario Town Square, the entity is keeping the fake sun over the Ontario Town Square, and the entity is stalking commercial airline planes to the left of my person, to the east. It's never to the west of my person. And I don't want to say never, it's very scarcely. The entity is keeping them to the east of my person, advancing however far it is that I advance, but they stay on the east side of my person. And so where I'm at the Ontario Town Square, there's the fake sun. The entity is stalking commercial airline planes and hovering over the Ontario Town Square as though they're taking off right there at the Ontario Town Square. So they're starting at a low elevation, and then they're rising rising. That's what they're doing at the Woodside Senior Apartments. So you're flying from what would be a far distance from the Ontario International Airport, and you're necessarily doing so coming back down at a lower elevation to then quote unquote rise, and not quote unquote because they're actually, but as though they're taking off. You're not taking off from Terminal 2 or 4 here. Okay, at the Woodside Senior Apartments. And that's clearly seen from the address of the airport and the locations of the terminals and what they're doing at takeoff. You are immediately rising in elevation. And I've also captured that, for example, when I'm at the TAD office, the San Bernardino County Public Services, where the fake sun is over that TAD office on Hope Boulevard, and the entity is right there that's facing the direction of the airport. Those planes are taking off right there, going straight up into the sky. That's what you're doing also when you're taking off from the airports, from the terminals. I've been on planes, traveled across the world. The entity is going far from the location of the airport, necessarily hovering at a low elevation to then rise in elevation specifically over the location where I'm at. I'm at Woodside, so this is where they are at the apartments, coming from a different location at a lower elevation to then rise in elevation over the apartments. And they're doing so also the hour. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Also the location where the fake sun is rising and setting. Also the environment in engineered light. Also the real-time knowledge, the federal stalking. While I'm documenting the conduct of demons, they engage in more of that. Alan D. WAPNER is also a demon. This is a corrupt government actor whose operations of a corrupt airport that's engaging in state surveillance. He's not ignorant about a statewide pattern of conduct that is unique. It is demonic in particular. And the mental illness is exposed while you expose them, and they're caught surrounded by evidence that they can under no circumstances explain, make innocent. You can't also explain it away when it's in conformity to a long documented P.O.C. You talking about demons that I have no relationship with any, while I'm in San Diego, California, while I'm in Nevada, and you have what is the same P.O.C, the fake sun. That's not the sun that's going to be while it's in alignment to my bedroom window over the top of my head at the same time, because that's the level of detail of evidence that I provided, and I go to a different state, and you're also in that environment that is readily identifiable, that is supernatural on its face. That's where the entity is maintaining the ongoing relevant positioning aerial surveillance of a demonic nature using planes and helicopters. And while you expose them engaging in a pattern of conduct, which is insurmountable evidence, the demon possessed who are mentally ill, again, mental illness of the demon possessed, a basis of disqualification, while you are understanding the ways in which this entity is going to be convicted and the ways in which you're going to frame legislation in order to keep such mental illness, such demon possession, such psychotic and high-level criminal conduct outside of being able to even be at an airport without being subject to high alert, okay? But let alone being able to fly planes and helicopters, okay? The entity engages in more of it. So this is, again, while I'm on my phone, and I captured, again, you heard moments earlier when I'm stating, the entity is sounding helicopter activity. This is what the entity is doing. It's retaliatory in nature. It's a conformity to the P.O.C. Moments later, the entity flies over, which I captured on video. I did add it to this podcast so that you can listen to it. As then I upload that and convert it into audio, and I capture screenshots so you can see what the entity, not only are they group stalking, they do so more because these are hostile demons. Again, a psychopath that's mad because you're defeated. That's the personality of Satan. That is mental illness. That's a psychopath. That's psychopathic conduct, right? They do so while they're also monitoring. Elements of monitoring affect your internet operation. They affect your operation of your communication devices. Okay, that's how they're also engaged in federal stalking. So understand this. And it's also a demon, a demonic entity, a demon possessed entity that's showing hostility. All of this is employed in the elements of monitoring. The entity engages in the elements of monitoring to group stalk you. That's literally how you group stalk. They move around in the engineered light with noise. That's how group stalking is occurring, and it is state surveillance. They also engage in the elements of monitoring with regard to federal stalking on the venue of the internet. Surveillance online, it affects internet operation. It affects the operation of your communication devices, creating superficial malfunctions, if you will, screens to asking you for information that's not ordinarily required in order to do a task that you don't face such obstacles before. And then it's, if you don't know any better, if you're not used to it, ability to keep you away from whatever it is they don't want you. With me, it's because I'm documenting and publishing to keep me from accessing the Google Drive, for example. But the entity's been doing it so long. I've shown, and I've also shared the ways you can maneuver around. But this is also changing the landscape. It's not a secret about what's happening on venues such as Google Google and YouTube and Facebook and online and whatnot and on communication devices. And because the entity is now faced with what are facts, this is a public urgency and obligation to provide answers for it. Okay, so there's no denying what the government is doing and what the government is doing on the internet via communication devices. And that same entity of these intellectual geniuses that create all of these devices should be able to and should be able to and are in a position where they should be required to come up with a response regarding the criminal conduct that's threatening the lives of American citizens. It's happening on your websites. It's happening using your devices. It's happening with regard to criminal conduct that you want to claim you're not going to cooperate with anymore, since they're faced with the evidence proving what they're doing. The entity is never going to admit what it's doing. You have to surround it with evidence. Okay. So anyway, the entity is doing so with regard to now not only group stalking, but also federal stalking, also to communicate a threat. They're hostile demons that will engage in amplified audible activity just to communicate hostility. They engage in light activity to communicate hostility. Remember, it's demonic. It's designed to terrorize you, psychologically torture you, state, oh, I'm mad at you, I hate you. The fact that you know what we're doing, that's what the demons are doing. And that's what they're doing, that using planes. Those are demons. Okay, Alan D. Wapner is a demon-possessed person. And I believe this demon-possessed person happens to be affiliated with the Jewish community. I want to let you know that there is no racial lines. There's no difference with regard to your socioeconomic status, your income bracket. And those that wear or are affiliated with what is being in the Jewish community, they're not an exception. Okay, it's a spiritual condition. Those who have not accepted the Lord Jesus Christ, all right, as your Lord and Savior, you're not Holy Spirit filled, and this is shown through the fruits. Okay, the fruits of the Holy Spirit, the fruits that you know them by their deeds, what it is that you do, how you live your life, and not what it is that you want the world to see, walking around and conducting yourself and behaving outwardly where people are watching you and are aware of you, and aware of what it is that you're doing and what you're associated with. That's not what the actual truth of the person. The truth of the person is what they're doing when they think no one is watching. What they're doing that they don't want anyone to know about. And I don't mean with regard to your personal life and those normal things like, okay, you might eat too much ice cream at night, and that's not healthy. Okay. I don't advocate that. Okay. But you might, pig out a little bit because you've had a hard week. I'm not talking about being a normal human being. Okay. I'm talking about wickedness. Okay. Those who practice wickedness. All right. And they don't want that to be known because that's not what they're telling about on their social media platforms. They're not talking about that in their commercials. They're not bragging about that when they're talking about how they're do-gooders and what they're doing for the public. And they're keeping the public under surveillance. They're group stalking them. And as I am blowing the whistle, they're threatening, surveilling, and keeping me under surveillance with the people of the state and doing it through demonic methods. They're a bunch of demons. That's what the Ontario International Airport, and they're engaged in years of evidence and the whole body of evidence. When you look at the big picture of what's already on the record, it's already established here, 2024 evidence of the P.O.C. They're already in the cycle of evidence. But I mean, there's a whole bigger picture regarding what the demonic aspect of this entity, this Ontario International Airport, is fully engaged in state surveillance. And this is demonic activity using airplanes, demons who have access to pilot licenses, who engage in surveillance and threatening the lives of an American citizen, speaking to their hostility. And they're represented by the commercial names, the airlines. Okay, these are businesses. They're making money in America and they're engaged in this criminal conduct. And I documented, it's on the record. I documented Delta Airlines. I documented FedEx, Amazon Prime, UPS using their commercial airline planes, stalking me. I've already documented it. They concentrate their plane activity typically on the left side of my person. No matter how far I advance up and down in Ontario, up and down the street, wherever it is I'm located, the plane activity is typically to what is the east side of my person. And doing so while the fake sun is right there over the top of my head, and doing so with the entity that's stalking in helicopters, with the entity, the people of the state that are stalking with some method of light. It's the same identical pattern of conduct. Demonic activity via aerial surveillance with knowledge of the fact that it's being documented. Plane activity rapidly picking up as I began documenting it in video and on podcasts. So I just want to make sure I capture that. And so this is with regard to what you can hear. That's amplified audible activity. There's no taking off of planes over the senior citizen complex. Okay, they're coming from an airport, hovering, hunkering down at a lower elevation and then taking off again. And you can clearly see that. The elevation that they're at, you're not taking off at that low elevation, remaining at that low elevation, flying all the way from the international airport. Planes, I've been on plenty of them, traveled many different countries, many different places, okay? You are taking off from the airport, from the airport terminal. You are at an elevation by the time you get to, if you're coming to from the airport, you're at an elevation where you're not going to be also disrupting quiet enjoyment. There's so many aspects to what the entity is doing and the ways in which the neighborhoods and whatnot, zoning laws, that's why these things exist. All right. Because there's an airport doesn't mean you're going to be disrupted in all aspects of your life by the planes that are always around everywhere you're going. No, that's group stalking. That's group stalking. All right. So it's currently 2:39 a.m. That's evidence of what is retaliation, intimidation, threatening my life and safety while the entity is engaged in federal stalking. And it's the same exact P.O.C. What was the method? Plain activity. This is what the demon in apartment number 55 is doing. I'm documenting the P.O.C. The more I document, the demon engages in more and more of it. That's speaking to the mental illness of the demon possessed who are group stalking. Recognize the pattern. Don't marry yourself to the image. It's the same exact pattern of behavior. It's demonic in nature. It's speaking to real-time knowledge. All right. That knowledge is also shown through the specific environment, but nonetheless, as they engage in the P.O.C., as they pick up the frequency with which they engage in the P.O.C., as I document, they engage in it, as I document, they engage in it and I document it. They engage in it again as I document it. They engage in it more and more and more and more and more as I continuously document it. Those are demons. Okay. Again, it is 2:40 a.m. It's September 25th, 2024. This is P.O.C. It's 2:41 a.m. Okay, taking off and lowered in elevation and taking off above the Woodside Senior Apartments for purposes of amplified audible activity. This is analogous to the police departments flying in circles over the apartment buildings, and it's the entity is engaging in group stalking right along with the people of the state. P.O.C. It's 2:42 a.m. Ongoing amplification. It's currently 2:44 a.m. Remember, this is audible activity while the entity is engaged in the elements of monitoring. This is 24-hour surveillance, crossing a path, and amplification. While I'm in operation of a communication device, currently screenshotting the airline departures and arrivals, which is none that are scheduled coming from the Ontario International Airport, arriving or coming from Ontario International Airport. It's currently 2:45 a.m. Documenting what will be 5 a.m. For their departures, and while I'm in operation, documenting Ontario International Airport in particular, the entity is engaging in the elements of monitoring pursuant to federal stalking conduct, and also the hostility by demons, again, who are going to be prosecuted. That's the mental illness exposed. And it's also, again, this is a senior citizen complex. They're hovering over the complex, and the entity is heard as the door is closed, so I'm just opening it so you can hear it even more. But it's amplified in volume inside of the apartment. This entity does the same thing with helicopter activity, the same thing with train activity, the same thing with the demon that is apartment in apartment number 55. They alternate the methods, and this is where the fake sun is rising and setting at Woodside Senior Apartments. This is what the entity is doing throughout the state of California. Here it is moments later, 2:46 a.m. This is, again, criminal conduct. This is the entity that's engaging in the elements of monitoring state surveillance by use of the international airports. And this is, again, the entity that is doing so with knowledge of the fact that it's being documented. And this is the entity that is exposing how to the feds, because this is to expose to the federal government how state surveillance occurs, how it's underway, and the entity is engaging in what is elemental and the engineered light amongst the people of the state who are not sleeping. And the entity is using, again, the means of an airport to engage in crossing a path, in doing so, which is demonic pacing. This is crossing path repeatedly over and over again, just like a demon in apartment 55, walking by over and over again in that specific environment. And the high frequency of the planes, speaking to, again, one after another. This is 2 minutes, separated by 2 minutes apart. That's also, again, 2 minutes apart while they are at a low elevation, taking off, heightening an elevation over the complex, which is heard inside of the apartment as well as where I'm at. This is indeed the P.O.C, and this is satisfying the elements of monitoring at this early hour. This is the foolish conduct of the state. So, Alan D. WAPNER, this is a corrupt government actor, and this is a demon. He's going to be removed from the position he's currently holding. He's over a corrupt government body, the Ontario City Council, a documented group stalker. The fake son is over that Ontario City Hall. This is the president over the Ontario International Airport, where an airport is concentrating plane activity to participate in state surveillance with the people and the state directly. The Ontario International Airport represented a state actor, by the way, but it is engaged in state surveillance. And this is also, again, getting down to the details. These are demons flying commercial airline planes, and that's what needs to be addressed with regard to the prosecution and exposure of airports engaged in state surveillance in the state of California. It's currently 2:48 a.m. It's P.O.C. So I just want to make sure you're understanding what the entity is engaging in, not only group stalking, these mentally ill, these deranged demons who are engaging in this secret system that's no longer a secret. The entity freaks out, and that freaking out conduct, that fear that demons experience, the demon possessed, they engage in more criminal conduct when they are in that position. And this is very foolish criminal activity. With regard to maintaining a criminal enterprise and not exposing how you engage in that, the entity is very unintelligent. But this is great because this is educational for the world. Okay, this is criminal conduct of a demonic nature, and it's also teaching you the mindset of the demon possessed. And I don't know that you necessarily need to study the mind of Satan, but it is informative with regard to the feds, if you will. They are interested and in a position where you are I'm pointing it out to you because this is something that is within the duties that you have. You not only prosecute the criminal, you study the criminal, how the criminal operates, why the criminal operates the way that it operates at the moment that it does, what it's aware of, what's inspiring what they do as they do it. All I'm doing is speaking that, and you can recognize the pattern that I point out with regard to the behavior of the demons and what they're doing and why they're doing it. The evidence of that, which you can test what I'm speaking, is because they do it. It's a pattern. The more that I document the demon possessed, the more that they engage in it. And this is because the entity that sought to criminally defame the targeted individual is actually exposed as a mentally ill psychopath that is freaking out by engaging in more of it, because the narrative is supposed to be that it's innocent what I'm doing. That's why I do it right in front of you, because obviously I'm not doing anything wrong. I have nothing to fear. Why would I do something wrong right in front of your face? That person is paranoid. That person is crazy. Don't listen to that person. And that's even if it gets that far, because the target individual is in a position where they are immediately silenced. If their life is not already snuffed out, they're kidnapped and labeled with a mental illness, labeled with a criminal record, and put away and shut out, discarded from society. But that's the mindset, and that's clearly it's unintelligent. It's highly unintelligent, and it's very presumptuous. This is the entity relying on, again, the identification of it being the fact that because you're an airport, that it is unheard of, and Satan is right. It is unheard of that you're stalking in helicopters. You are stalking in helicopters and in airplanes, though. You are, and the evidence proves it. The entity engages in what is very delusional conduct, engaging in more of that which is what you understand, what the rest of the world understands as group stalking. So you are clear, the entity, a demon-possessed delusional entity of a bunch of psychopaths, a bunch of demons, disregard all the evidence and they engage in it. And that is good for you, because the demons will stand out like a sore thumb to you. That's for your benefit, so you can see them and you can recognize them. But this is what the entity is doing, and it's a pattern. Okay. This is speaking to the entity that's aware of the fact that I'm documenting it, and plane activity picks up 2:41 a.m., then 2:44 a.m. and 2:46 a.m. And this is moment by moment. You're talking about commercial airline planes. So you're talking about traffic, heavy traffic in the sky space, 2 o'clock in the morning at this loud volume over this zone. This is a senior citizen complex also. But that's just the common sense aspect under existing natural law. The location of the airport, the Ontario International Airport, clearly deviating from any terminal at the Ontario International Airport to be at a low elevation over the apartment complex, as though you're taking off over the complex, which again is amplification on all accounts. It's amplified, and it's also targeting. That's why you're hovering over the apartment complex and taking off above and heightening in elevation. And it's also targeting because it's in engineer light and where the fake sun is rising and setting. It's very unintelligent. It's built into the P.O.C. You're recognizing the mental illness of that entity as opposed to what the entity sought to falsely depict the targeted individual. The entity through police departments will stalk you in your face. Criminal summoning is an example of it. Pulling over somebody else. They're not pulling you over. They're pulling over somebody else. And the entity does it right in your face. And the targeted individual they're not to the point to where they're recognizing. They might not even recognize a pattern per se, but you have a gut instinct when you're being targeted like this. Okay. And you may not be able to put words to it. You may not know why you're so disconcerted by it, but there's something about it that, and you're everywhere that you're going. No, the police might not be pulling you over per se. Now, let me be clear. The pattern of conduct and the prosecution of any entity will not be established based on the absence of evidence that you are clearly being targeted. Meaning just having a hunch is not enough to prosecute the state. That's what I mean. I'm speaking to the experience of the ordinary target individual. You need evidence to prosecute, okay, in the United States, and that's for the protection of everybody. Okay, you just can't go off of, I have a feeling. That's not how you prosecute a case. That's not evidence. Okay, but I am stating that the entity is targeting you in a way in which it's appearing in front of you and everyone else. By the way, everyone else is the people of the state. Okay. They're all targeting you. They're doing it in a specific environment. That's how you're recognizing that you're being targeted by the demons who will in your face engage in conduct right before you. And it is supposed to appear as though there's nothing criminal about this. That's why I'm doing it right in front of your face. I'm not even directing my what I'm doing towards you. My back is to you. I'm not even quote unquote aware of your presence. I'm focusing on someone else. All right. This is the evidence of the entity stalking by police departments, pulling over another person. The fake sun is over your head. The police lights are light activity in your path. That traffic stop is happening in your path. And the pattern of conduct is such that the entity is pulling over other people everywhere that you're going. Everywhere that you're going, there's a police stop. While the entity is keeping a fake sun over your head. And while the impossible light activity, the demonic light that you've noticed, you're surrounded by this environment, while it might not be you that's being approached by police, but the police are always around you. This is just in one example when you're recognizing group stalking. And also the entity is doing so while you are subject to the pattern of conduct by the people of the state who are group stalking with that entity. You can recognize the pattern of state of criminal summoning. Well, the entity will use sirens with regard to while they're pulling somebody else over. Their sirens are occurring with simultaneity to what you're doing when you're not even anywhere near around them. They can't see you, which is what you think they can't see you. Ostensibly, they can't see you, but there's sirens while they're pulling someone else over and the fake sun is over you and they're directing their attention elsewhere. You are able to recognize how demons are targeting you very maliciously. And they do it in plain sight because in their delusional minds where Satan sought to engage in targeting American citizens in order to sacrifice them and kidnap them, murder their reputation as well, which is what Satan wants to do to the children of the Lord Jesus Christ, those who belong to him. That's what he wants to do. That's the purpose. The entity is doing so in a manner that's not supposed to be recognized or even entertained. No one's going to even listen to you because no one's even talking to you. They don't even know you. What are you talking about? You're on your face supposed to appear as though you're paranoid. You're hallucinating. You're making it up. Okay. That's the mindset of the entity. Their mindset with regard to the evidence that this entity is faced with, they are clearly not prepared for the evidence that they are facing that already surrounds them. And no one is ignorant about what they're doing and the ways in which they do it. That's the delusional, demon-possessed group stalker. That's the mental illness that is also a secret to you, but it's not a secret anymore while they engage in it, because that's their desired mindset. Their intent is to openly engage in that which is a secret method of targeting. Okay. And they do so in a readily identifiable environment. So even I'm just pointing out common sense. They're flying over a senior citizen complex. All of them have a right to quiet enjoyment. The entity does the same thing with helicopters, vibrating the apartments, flying in circles over your apartment. It's amplified and it's very loud. In other words, they're doing it at all hours of the night, and nobody's complaining. Not even at a senior citizen complex. You know why? Because they're engaged in that pattern of conduct as well. They're all under the same fake sun, by the way. That's how you know that. All right. So that's understanding the malice of an entity. And I just wanted to point that out. 2:41 a.m., then 2:44, then 2:46. I'm capturing high level frequency over a senior citizen complex at a low elevation, as though you're taking off from the parking lot of the shopping plaza right in front of the. No, you're not. There's no airport right there. There is no point anywhere over here where they're taking off at that low elevation. You are necessarily coming to this location, targeting, and then rising up, heightening in elevation. And it's also amplified in volume. The P.O.C. already surrounds them. You already know that amplification is built into the pattern of conduct. It's amplification, which is speaking to intentional targeting. It's in possible light activity. That's speaking to whatever's creating audible activity. It's a method of monitoring. Yes, they're monitoring using planes. Very unheard of, highly psychotic. Only delusional demons will do so in the manner that you just saw, that you just heard, to their own demise. Okay, this is the government that's corrupt, that still cannot fathom in their mind that they are actually caught and that their secret system is over. And by the way, it's been over for a long time. It's been over. Okay, so I just want to point that out. That's literally what you just witnessed right now. While demons, second, moment by moment, 2 minutes later, then another plane 2 minutes later, then another plane 2 minutes later over a senior citizen complex. So let me let you hear this while it's amplified in volume. It's 2:59 a.m. There's no terminal anywhere near Woodside Senior Apartments. So this is, again, at a lower elevation, which is supposed to be the explanation for the amplified audible activity. And it is 2:59 a.m. There is no a location near the Woodside Senior Apartments in this zone where you're taking off to be in any low elevation over the apartment complex. And by the way, even at a heightened elevation, the entity is equally amplifying audible activity. These are demons that are stalking in a very highly unintelligent method. Now that you are aware of not only the demonic features of the system and also training your eyes to recognize it. This is being published on the podcast. It's currently 3 a.m. This is documentation of what Alan D. WAPNER, this is a demon-possessed person and also a corrupt government actor who is sitting on the Ontario City Council. And Alan D. WAPNER is not the only demon. All right. He is hand in hand with the demon that is Paul Leon, the mayor of the city of Ontario, who is also aware of what is going on in the city of Ontario. While the population, he is a part of the same population. He's a demon-possessed group stalker who was sitting in a position as a mayor in the city of Ontario. Years of terrorism by the airport, years of terrorism by the police department, the sheriff's department, the fire departments, the demons who are driving ambulances in Ontario, who are group stalking, surrounded by that cycle of evidence showing the unmistakable, identical P.O.C, pattern of conduct. Okay. And they are literally engaging in what is under, again, the leadership. This is a demon, a corrupt government actor on the city Council, Ontario City Council, and also the president of this Ontario International Airport, where planes are used to maintain elements of monitoring and currently being used to engage in what is not only group stalking, but federal stalking and the criminal intent to harass, terrorize, intimidate, psychologically torture the one who is blowing the whistle on that entity that is engaged in criminal surveillance. Okay, this is what the entity is doing while it is engaging in the elements of monitoring for all of those criminal purposes, which again, AVANATH communities will also compensate for. Okay, it is currently 3:01 a.m. on September 25th, 2024, and this is P.O.C. All right, it is currently 3:16 a.m. This is documentation of federal stalking. This would be the entity that is indeed group stalking and engaged in federal stalking violation of Title 18. This is section 2261A, subsections 1 and 2, utilizing the criminal system of federal stalking. This is surveillance that's online, and doing so using communication devices on the venue of the internet, which is implicating interstate commerce. and the use of communication devices to engage in federal stalking, which I am exposing the P.O.C. The entity is engaging in federal stalking through these demonic elements of monitoring, which affect the operation of your internet operation, your communication devices themselves. And the entity is interfering with internet operation. I took a screenshot. And so I'm currently using an app on my phone, and I am connected to the Spectrum Wi-Fi. Spectrum is a documented group stalker, not only relevant position, but also on the venue of the internet. And they're fully engaged in the P.O.C. Documented at Economy Inn in Ontario, documented at Alvarado Gardens in Los Angeles, documented on the venue of the internet via emails, the real-time knowledge that they maintain while they communicated via emails, which is criminal activity. When they're sending an email, state surveillance is underway. It's criminal conduct. So it's engagement in surveillance, but they are very heavily documented group stalkers on the roads and the highways, group stalking using their commercial vehicles in the path with the rest of the population, the people of the state. And so nonetheless, inside of this facilitating venue apartment number 51 with simultaneity to using the Wi-Fi. So the entity is engaged in interference with internet, slowing down the internet. Spectrum themselves are also engaged in the P.O.C. But want to make sure that I'm exposing, and you'll see it captured in screenshots again. While I'm using the app, there's nothing wrong with my app. The entity is interfering with the operation of an app. This is federal stalking criminal activity. So these are the demons that engage in the conduct. They're the ones that are stalking in planes and helicopters. They put themselves on my camera. All I do is hold it up. Okay. They engage in this criminal activity with the demonic light, the people of the state, group stalking under the fake sun with engineer light. And then the entity is then huddled around communication devices, trying to obsessively stalk that evidence that they provide to me from publishing it on the internet. Also exposing the mental illness, okay? The entity that is hovering over the planes, and it's also corroborating evidence, it's circumstantial evidence regarding the criminal conduct, establishing that the entity is indeed engaged in group stalking, because the ongoing criminal endeavor to interfere with the ability to publish and document it online. It will be used against the entity. It is also evidence that you are indeed a group stalker, and the evidence itself establishes it. It's circumstantial and ongoing corroborating evidence that you are, in fact, a group stalker, while you are obsessively trying to stop that evidence from being published online. It's pathetic. Okay. So I captured this in screenshots. I'm already logged into the Wi-Fi network. And so while I'm already logged in, and I turn the Wi-Fi on my phone because the internet's interfering with the T-Mobile network signal. Okay. While I am uploading the podcast and converting, for example, the video into audio so that you can hear it on the podcast, it shows the progress. So like 50%, 60%, 70%. And it just stalls at 68%. And it doesn't progress anymore. This is the entity that is indeed monitoring on my phone. It's not a genuine failure of internet or the phone or the app. Nothing's wrong with the phone whatsoever. So I do alternate between using the Metro network and the Wi-Fi. And I'm explaining this because I'm going through the ways in which the entity is interfering with internet connection. And this is going toward the prosecution of the state. It's occurring in this specific environment. The entity is monitoring on the venue of the internet, interfering with your communication devices. And this engineer light is key. It's the integral aspect with regard to the operation of internet and communication devices. I just want to point that out. Engineer light is inside of the location where you live, inside of your hotels, as I document, inside of your home. Engineer light is surrounding, and it's demonic. Just so that you know that. So anyway, the entity is engaging, interfering with that. As I turn on the Wi-Fi, I'm already logged into the Wi-Fi. It's already, I'm already logged in order to turn it on, and it automatically connects and it's set to reconnect. All of a sudden, immediately as I turn it on, in order to stop me from being able to continue, they interfered with my network connection. So I turn on the Wi-Fi to continue. In order to stop that, immediately the Wi-Fi network is a failure, stating that I need to log in. And I took a screenshot of that. And I also took a screenshot of the television, which is a means of light activity and audible activity, with simultaneity to my turning on the Wi-Fi in order to maneuver around the entity interfering with my internet, the T-Mobile connection, the network connection. Immediately, the television, which is connected to the internet as well, immediately stops. It stalls, which again is a method of stalking with activity. To begin the creation of noise and to cease noise is activity creation. To turn a light on after it was off, or to turn a light off after it was on, is light activity creation. So this is what the entity is doing. The television, I took a picture of that. You'll see the little spinning thing. The internet immediately stalls with simultaneity to my turning on the Wi-Fi. Okay, so you're talking about the Wi-Fi in the whole apartment immediately stalls the moment that I turn it on in order to continue using my app to publish or to convert the video into audio. That's what I'm doing on my phone. And the internet, the Wi-Fi that the television is connected to, I captured that in an image, and it shows that it was immediately turned off. This is what's happening with the TV. You can see the internet, that the Wi-Fi network that the TV is connected to immediately is disconnected. And it's occurring with simultaneity to my operation of my phone, which is both a method of stalking with activity. It's also criminal obstruction of justice with the intent to stop you from being able to blow the whistle. It's a threat to your life, to publish evidence that the federal government can retrieve in order to prosecute, investigate. Okay, so this is what the entity is doing in Spectrum is documented, and so is the entity that is group stalking. The demons that are stalking in planes are group stalking, engaged in federal stalking. The demons that are living in apartment 55 and the entire apartment complex, group stalking at 7-Eleven, living in relevant position. This is the police department. Just because you don't hear helicopter, they're always engaged in group stalking. That's why they engage in that knee-jerk conduct, appearing at the drop of a dime, the moment that I wake up, or the moment that I begin documenting demons by name or social security number, or taking their picture, or pointing out some damning aspect of the P.O.C. that the demons are hostile to. They don't like it, and so they'll arrive to their own demise in a helicopter. Okay, that they're stalking in helicopter 24/7. Okay, doing so in a perceptible manner is to communicate a threat to the target individual. That's to let you know that they're stalking you in a helicopter, which is criminal. Okay, it's criminal to engage in group stalking. It's criminal to communicate a threat while you're stalking in helicopter, and you're going to be prosecuted for that. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm publishing this, because that's federal stalking conduct with the intent to obstruct justice, and Spectrum is engaged in that P.O.C. While the entity, let me be clear, is even outside of the inclusion of Spectrum, you're surrounded by communication devices. You're surrounded by the government, these corrupt law enforcement agencies who are using their weaponry, if you will, to keep you under surveillance, to monitor, to interfere, which is demonic. Okay, they're demonic methods, and you're surrounded by the entity that is concentrating all of that effort toward obstructing your use of your internet and your communication devices. But based on what I'm exposing, and the entity that is indeed engaged in the P.O.C., the target individual doesn't have to sit back and scrutinize and ask and try to ascertain, who's doing it? Is it Spectrum that just turned my Wi-Fi off, or is it the demons that are flying in circles over my apartment right now when my internet started failing? You're going to document your internet provider. They're engaged in the P.O.C. Okay, they're the people of the state. You can document the P.O.C. and the entity that's around you. They are engaged in the P.O.C. as well, but so is your internet provider. Okay, so I wanted to document that, and the internet operation is immediately interrupted as I turn on the Wi-Fi on my phone, and the Wi-Fi that's connected to the television in the living room immediately is disconnected. And that's to stop me from uploading my podcast on my phone, because these idiots stalking under a fake sun, hovering over a senior citizen complex with impunity, okay, at 2:41, 2:44, 2:46 a.m. and even before that on an ongoing basis, 24/7, by the way. They did that, knew I was documenting it, and then the same demons, the same corrupt entity wants to then obstruct justice and try to stop you. You would think if you're engaging in this conduct, you certainly don't care while I capture video of it. Why are you then obsessively trying to stop publishing it on the internet? This is the mental illness that I am confronted with when I'm documenting a bunch of demon-possessed group stalkers. The state of California. Okay, it is currently 3:25 a.m. This is P.O.C. This is evidence of criminal obstruction of justice. It's federal stalking online and using communication devices. P.O.C. Erica Lorraine Spencer here. The following is an audio version of video evidence that is captured for purposes of mass distribution, which is why I am capturing it and sharing it on the podcast for evidentiary purposes, and also to reveal the wealth of documentation that extends beyond what it is that I document on podcasts. Much of the video and images will be published onto the YouTube channel, the P.O.C., and it is also shared on the Google Drive Again, this is for purposes of revealing what I remain subject to, which is federal group stalking and monitoring. It is a demonic system of state surveillance that the government is practicing in concert with the people of the state. And it should be known and well understood that for the government to engage in federal group stalking and monitoring, this is a crime that is committed with a criminal purpose to threaten the life of an American citizen. This is to conspire to murder and or permanently kidnap an American citizen while engaging in a perpetual sex offense in concert with the people of the state. P.O.C. There's the fake sun flying directly over the apartment, and they're going to federal prison. Okay, that's the malice of AVANATH communities. While the entity listens to you point out their criminal conduct, equally barbaric, not different from Afghanistan. And this is the fake sun that was still here. As you saw my shadow appearing on this building at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, living in relevant position is the same criminal system, and you're going to federal prison for group stalking with the terrorist organization, the Ontario Police Department, who's engaged in federal stalking in concert with the people. This is where you saw my shadow upright, and you saw my shadow upright on this building, and this is where the fake sun was present, where the entity you could see through the windshield of the vehicle. This is representing 9 ACS 305. That's the people of the state engaging in what is threatening your life while they are keeping you under surveillance, not only in relevant position, which is what AVANATH communities represents. You're looking at impossible light activity while the sunset is in Alvarado Gardens through my bedroom window. This is not sunlight, and that's speaking to the evidence against the people who are going to federal prison and who employ those under the age of majority to maintain the elements of monitoring. And then while the demon-possessed engage in that egregious criminal conduct, they engage in more terrorism and harassment as an entity flying directly over the apartment where the fake sun is remaining at the same property while engaged in federal stalking. A sex offender keeping a woman under surveillance inside of an apartment where the circus light activity is captured. They are going to federal prison, like I stated, using minor children to engage in it. And if they're not natural born citizens, they're also going to be deported. Okay, this is P.O.C. It's currently 6:20 p.m. This is going to be added to the podcast. That's real-time evidence of what the entity is doing. As you saw that those demons, that the names of the demons stalking in a helicopter, they're going to be produced because Mike LORENZ is criminally responsible. He will be removed from the position that he holds while the state's pattern of conduct, a statewide and unique criminal system, is underway under his dangerous and corrupt leadership, while the Ontario Police Department and the state is engaging in federal stalking in violation of Title 18. They do so in concert via minor children. And while you expose the people of the state, the people of the state, which AVANATH communities is going to compensate me for. Understand this criminal system, they're going to compensate me for that. While this is underway on their watch, it's occurring on your real property. This is what LAPD was doing on Speaker Company's property. Todd Speaker and what is AVANATH communities, same exact criminal system. You're juxtaposing the crime scene. This is speaking to what is malice by a government that is acting with the people of the state and not helping them. That family in 41 represents AVANATH, who is going to be criminally and civilly prosecuted, and that family is going to be separated. Those children are going to be removed from their custody. They're employing them in group stalking, just like I stated in the images, which you'll hear on the podcast. And as I'm capturing the podcast, immediately that is the entity flying over in helicopter in the environment where the fake sun is rising and setting. Okay, that's the P.O.C. And that is directly relevant to what 55 is doing, as I'm documenting, to what the Ontario International Airport is doing, which I'm documenting, to what the population is doing, including that guy, a vendor of this community that's engaging in the elements of monitoring with the state, who just flew over in a helicopter, not helping the demon inside of apartment number 41, keeping a woman under surveillance, engaged in federal stalking, and then the foolish conduct of the entity that you are group stalking with flies over my head, communicating a threat to my safety, my life, and my well-being, which this demon knows all about what I'm stating, and that's why he's going to federal prison. His baby's mother's going to federal prison, and his dad is going to federal prison. Apartment number 41. Okay, who you see these minor children, they're going, and so is the demon that's stalking a helicopter, and Mike LORENZ is facing federal prison as well. The name of these, the demons that are stalking a helicopter, their names are going to be produced at federal prosecution because they're going to federal prison. Okay, the entity is full of demons. Ontario Police Department, they're corrupt. They are a demon-infected agency. They're engaged in state surveillance. They are not a legitimate law enforcement agency, as the evidence shows. And they're also demon-possessed. That's why you have this demonic environment concentrated over this apartment. That's why you have the immediacy of the arrival of a helicopter, which is not changing the subject. What I'm speaking to on the podcast is what I will repeat here. The entity engages in criminal conduct, employing minor children, engaging in what is teaching them to engage in methods of malicious terrorism, not different, not less barbaric, but more despicable. While in the U.S., the entity is engaging in teaching children to engage in terrorism instead of placing large guns in their hands, teaching them the demonic methods of targeting someone, psychologically torturing them while engaging in the elements of monitoring. Pacing around on their big trucks, on their big wheels, is light activity, audible activity creation, while your demon-possessed possessed parent is group stalking and engaged in federal stalking. And as you expose it, as you speak to it, immediately the demons who are group stalking representing the state fly directly over your head. That's the P.O.C. Not different from what's going on in countries such as Afghanistan. Okay? Not different, not less barbaric, more despicable, more disgusting. And you have the people of state that are going to federal prison, the demons representing the Ontario Police Department who are going to federal prison, and AVANATH communities. They will be civilly and criminally prosecuted. Okay? This is impossible light activity that has nothing to do with that light source. That is, again, 7:38 in the morning to what is currently 6:23 in the evening from this side of the front door to this side of the front door. This is exactly what the LAPD were engaging in. This is exactly what the San Diego Police Department is engaged in. The Fontana Police, the Montclair Police, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department group stalking using helicopters has been documented. The entity group stalking the Montclair Police Department, the Chino Police Department. I have documented the Monrovia Police Department, the Arcadia Police Department, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, the Nevada State Police, the California Highway Patrol, all engaging in the same demonic pattern of conduct. And the Ontario Police Department is another terrorist organization who is going to be disbanded. Okay, they're engaged in federal stalking while with simultaneity to my documentation that is being accumulated on a cell phone in violation of federal stalking statute, Title 18, Section 22618, subsections 1 and 2. They are arriving in the specific environment pursuant to the documented pattern of conduct in a helicopter with the criminal purpose to obstruct justice via intimidation, retaliation, threatening conduct, arriving in group stalking in a helicopter as you document the people of the state and you speak to the barbaric nature of their criminal conduct, which is sexually violent, perverted, and demented. Those closeted psychopaths sit there on their porch while they're group stalking simultaneously. While I walk by and capture that, all the elements of monitoring are being satisfied and they're going to federal prison. That is, again, AVANATH communities who will be civilly and criminally prosecuted, which was the subject that I'm discussing on my podcast. And I'm going to add this video to that podcast as well. That is the prosecution of the people of the state, the entire state of California, as I just captured another video of what is the comprehensive system of federal group stalking and monitoring. It's state surveillance, and it's also surveillance that's online. On my communication device, the demons are engaged in 24-hour surveillance, and that's exactly what Alan D. Wapner, the president over the Ontario International Airport, engaging in demonic pacing, criminal surveillance, federal stalking in violation of Title 18, using commercial airline planes to hover over this 55-plus community at all hours of the day, maintaining the same demonic elements of monitoring, with knowledge of what it is that I say as I say it, engaging in a sex offense. Okay, and that's speaking to, again, the removal of another demon whose dangerous and corrupt leadership is resulting in what is ongoing facilitation of this state system by an airport that is centering its operations around what I do as I do it inside of an apartment where the elements of monitoring are maintained. This is P.O.C. It's currently 6:26 p.m. That is speaking to what I'm discussing on the podcast. This entire family inside of 41, loss of custody of those minor children who are being abused on video as I'm capturing the P.O.C. They are also employed in criminal conduct. The entity has made these minor children sex offenders and criminal group stalkers, which is a federal offense. They've made them criminals and sex offenders by group stalking via those minor children. And they are also doing so while they're engaged in federal stalking with their daddy. They've been engaged in group stalking with their mama and with their granddaddy, and any of those in Apartment 41, like everyone else. And like even any demon a part of the Ontario Police Department, any of them that are not natural born citizens, those terrorists are going to be deported out of this country. Again, it is currently 6:26 p.m. and this is P.O.C. All right, it is currently 5:59 p.m. This is documentation of the pattern of conduct as I remain subject to it inside of apartment number 51 at third-party facilitating venue, Woodside Senior Apartments at 302 and 408 West G Street. 144 units represents this facilitating venue. That is an apartment complex. That is the crime scene where the entity is maintaining criminal elements of monitoring. That is, the entity is engaging in criminal surveillance at this property and federal stalking in violation of Title 18, Section 22618, subsections 1 and 2. As you can hear on the podcast, as I captured the Ontario International Airport, as I'm documenting the ongoing criminal conduct by the people of the state, acting via the demon-possessed third party. This is the government acting via a third party living at Woodside Senior Apartments in apartment number 55. This is what I was documenting at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. The substance of this evidence right now, I want to make sure that I specify this is relevant to, again, the inevitable criminal and civil prosecution of the people of the state, speaking to AVANATH Capital Management LLC, whose employees and whose family who are also living at the crime scene with the employee. This is attributed to that employee, that AVANATH Communities. They're on their payroll. And they are engaging in criminal activity that AVANATH Communities is profiting from while they're employees, and those living with their employee on the grounds that is a crime scene, engaging in criminal activity that AVANATH Capital Management LLC in Irvine, California has no exception from and will avoid under no circumstances liability for. Criminal liability, and for which is entitling me to civil damages for the ongoing psychological torture, harassment, and terrorism as an entity where I remain subject to AVANATH Capital Management's employees and the people of the state whom AVANATH Communities is profiting from, paying rent at this crime scene where state surveillance is underway, and that is shown as I captured screen shots. And this is podcast evidence, audible activity, because I want to make sure that I specify very detailed P.O.C. It's analogous to what I documented. It's exactly the same P.O.C., but I'm speaking to, again, I'm documenting AVANATH Communities directly, literally the demon-possessed third-party employee of that company. This is AVANATH Capital Management LLC. In other words, this is revealing the malice of the people of the state who are engaging in what is profiting in the United States while they're keeping American citizens under surveillance. And that is established because not only are the people of the state that are living on your property, the people of the state that are working for your property, the people of the state that are contracted with the property owners are all engaged in that pattern of conduct where the government is centering the elements of monitoring over the property, where the demonic is also relevant. And that is the light source that is remaining over literally AVANATH Communities property, Woodside Senior Apartments, for the duration of the day, which is a scientific impossibility. And everything that AVANATH Communities is being documented for and will be civilly liable for based on their criminal engagement in the pattern of conduct by virtue of what's occurring on their real property, by virtue of their also profiting while this criminal conduct, which is acting in furtherance of a conspiracy by the state to murder and kidnap someone, and it is directly engaged in by the employees who are right now using minor children who they are going to lose custody of, they being the demons that are living, again, the employee of AVANATH Capital Management. This is the Latino male, and it is relevant whether or not this family is a natural born citizen, because they will also be subject to deportation if they're not upon prosecution, and also loss of custody of the children who are a means of demonic pacing and audible activity. As you can hear the voices of the children, that's audible activity. While I'm showing you the images, what you'll see on the Google Drive for today, September 25th. This is impossible light activity, and I just step out. I don't even step out. I just peer my head out the door and show you the fake sun that's at the same property where I am at Woodside Senior Apartments at 308 West G Street. Again, there's no sun over Alvarado Gardens while it's remaining over Ontario, California, literally directly over my head, and the impossible light activity, which is supposed to be sunlight. Okay, so you're going to use the entity's idiotic and highly unrealistic and just clearly impossible light activity. That's exactly why it's referred to it that way. This is demonic, and it's not even natural. It's not even logical. The entity is engaging what is maintaining an environment that is communicating a threat to me while I remain inside of apartment number 51, which belongs to AVANATH Capital Management, where a criminal system by the government that AVANATH Communities is a part of and they represent. It's occurring on their real property. It's occurring on the grounds of the property where the government is maintaining criminal activity. It's occurring on the property where the people of the state, the entity who are paying them rent, who are coming onto the grounds by the consent of AVANATH, who are also working for AVANATH, and they will be held accountable for what I'm documenting. So I captured video this afternoon at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Specifically, it was at where I'm showing all manner of impossible light activity. And that video was captured at what was 2. Let me look at my document, 2:29 p.m. and that video lasted until 2:41. It is the direct evidence of the light source that's directly over the top of my head. And as I walk on the property from apartment 51 to the parking lot where a commercial actor, a vendor, which is by consent of the property, is present, engaging in criminal activity, light activity, relevant positioning, and ongoing criminal conduct with the entity that provides amplification, audible activity, which again, that guy is again by virtue of the contractual relationship, which is not required. Because literally the population just comes onto the ground and they just park in a relevant position on the parking lot, engaging in criminal conduct. Okay, so this is the terrorism that the entity is engaging in. I want you to hear, because this is audible activity that AVANATH is going to be prosecuted for, the voice of children who are going to be removed from the custody of the people, which you'll see in the images are also the means for this demon of apartment 41 to be pacing. And they're doing so in engineered light. at what the light source is at 549, and that's what I captured. And by the way, the demons who are using these minor children who are engaging in demonic behaviors, that's also speaking to what is the necessity to remove the children from the custody while they are exhibiting demon possession. Just want to be clear. This demon, this third party, is not having to prompt these children to immediately stalk with activity creation. As I open the door, you will see in the image, this is crossing path by a minor child on a big wheel. That's audible activity. The big wheels, the large toys that they ride on, that's noise. That's crossing a path and light activity creation. This is the demons who engage in this conduct, and you're seeing it engaged in by a minor child, and it is equally criminal. And the entity that does so through minor children goes to federal prison. That's also why this Latino male living in apartment 41 is going to federal prison. And if he and his baby's mother and I believe his stepfather, whatever the relationship of the actual employee of AVANATH, if any of them are not natural born citizens, they are going to federal prison, and then they're going to be deported. All right. But what I'm speaking to is the liability that AVANATH Capital Management retains. Okay. And this is how you are prosecuting the entire population. This is what Marriott Bonvoy, who is engaging in the same exact criminal system, having a fake sun rising and setting over that hotel. And how are you reconciling what is the presence of that light source? This is speaking to the intent of Marriott Bonvoy to participate in criminal activity. And it is the same with regard to AVANATH Capital Management. It is intent based upon the supernatural occurrence of that light source, which is not possibly the sun. This is evidence that's already existing. The idiots stalk under a fake sun, and those idiots will be civilly and criminally liable. While, by the way, those idiots have employees, they have customers, they have contractual relationships who are engaging in business on their properties while simultaneously engaging in criminal conduct. They're doing it with minor children. They're doing it with the rest of the people who surround the property in relevant position, and with the government that's using planes and helicopters. You will be civilly and criminally held liable for that. And I'm going to prosecute AVANATH Capital while you're looking at apartment number 41. This is a male keeping a woman under surveillance while he is, by the way, a father to minor children living with a woman. And by the way, the woman that he lives with, they're both engaging in surveilling a woman. This is sexual violence. This is very highly depraved, very demented criminal conduct. And they are also in custody of minor children. This is the description of the entire entity. Okay. But I want you to be clear. You're looking at a demon, a third party who is aware of my physical movement in the apartment. And this is just speaking to the demonic feature. And this is the reality of a demon possessed person, a malicious actor who's also using children to pace around and create activity while group stalking outside of the apartment. You're looking at the impossible light activity that I captured inside of the apartment. And I did this again after the 2 p.m. video of the fake sun. It's over the same property. Okay. Well, I'm just pointing my camera out at 549. That is maintaining the light source. Remember the sunrise on the opposite side of this same front door that I'm peeping out of at 7:38 in the morning. That's not the sun. That would be anywhere ever in Los Angeles to be in alignment with my living room window, creating any sunlight through my living room window, creating any appearance through the windshields and the vehicles parked at Alvarado Gardens parking lot. I was very thorough and detailed in showing all the ways in which you are looking at a light source, which is speaking to the population's criminal intent and purpose. Not accidental, not coincidental, to engage in the P.O.C. And the people of the state, they have companies. They're making money while they are engaging in intentional criminal conduct, which is acting in furtherance of a conspiracy to murder and kidnap someone. They do so knowingly while federal stalking is also underway, which AVANATH Capital Management LLC is going to be prosecuted for. The businesses, the commercial actors are engaged in federal stalking, and so are the people of the state that are living on AVANATH, AVANATH's community, that are working for AVANATH, that are on the grounds by having some vendor relationship with AVANATH. And that represents all of that I documented. And also I want to get to the duration of time. And so while I am capturing the light source, you will see in the image captured at 5:49 p.m. and 23 seconds, this is a demon who is in custody of minor children. This is a sex offender who is currently engaging in sexually violating myself. And he is using minor children to engage in a sex offense. Group stalking is an exceedingly violent sex offense. They're not ceasing to engage in the P.O.C. He's not pulling his children inside, which they remain in relevant position even while they're inside of the apartment. But I'm just giving you an example. They're not ceasing to engage in the elements of monitoring, pacing around while I go into the restroom and then engage in private personal conduct, which this sex offender engaging in surveillance by virtue of sitting on the staircase, in direct alignment when you're looking at the circus light activity inside of this apartment and the ongoing evidence of what is duration of time analysis of fake son that is facilitating his ability to keep a woman under surveillance while having a woman living with him and also in custody of children. Okay. This is a sex offender that is not appropriately labeled under existing federal law in order that the rest of the world will be aware of sex offenders like this and where it's not sufficient that they're on Megan's list. Okay, they are to be published as domestic terrorists who are exceedingly violent sex offenders who are engaged in what is state surveillance with the state of California. This, by the way, is where the entity is engaging in stalking and helicopter, which is also what I documented. In AVANATH communities, represented by the demons, the third parties who are representing this commercial actor, working for that commercial actor, group stalking like all the rest of the demons, and also engaging in terrorism and psychological torture, harassment as an entity, while engaging in federal stalking. The entity engages in harassment and terrorism and psychological torture by arriving with simultaneity to my documentation being captured on my phone, arriving in helicopter, vibrating the apartment, which is all activity creation. Okay, this is what the entity was doing using commercial airline planes. And the more that I document, the more that those airplanes engaged in demonic pacing, where, by the way, the demons living in apartment 41, working for AVANATH communities, is engaging in that same criminal activity. The entity is not engaging in what is maintaining impossible light activity 24 hours a day, engaging in group stalking by planes and helicopters 24 hours a day, such that the people of the state are not in relevant position, not monitoring, not engaged in federal stalking with that entity 24 hours a day. Okay. The entity is fully engaged in maintaining the elements of monitoring on a ceaseless basis, and using minor children is the documented criminal conduct in violation of federal law, which is the basis for being prosecuted for abuse of minor children. While they are engaging in the elements of monitoring, they will lose the minor children. There is no free protected conduct whatsoever. The entity does so with knowledge of what's being documented and engages in an ongoing foolish act of defiance, which is under no such circumstances suggesting innocence. This is the foolishness. These are the mentally depraved psychopaths who have no business being around children. Okay. And that's exactly what's going to happen. The entity is engaging in what is maintaining the elements of monitoring while that fake son is in alignment with my person. This is stalking evidence by the environment and doing so while sitting on the staircase outside of apartment number 41, where the demon working for AVANATH, who will be civilly and criminally liable for its employees, for its lessees, for its vendors' criminal activity, and also for the state who was group stalking over the sky space of Woodside Senior Apartments, engaging in what is harassment, terrorism, psychological torture, federal stalking, while surveillance in violation of my constitutional and human rights remains ceaselessly underway. Ceaselessly. Okay, so the entity is maintaining a fake sun. I'm showing you the engineer light that's on the ceiling inside of this apartment. It's reaching behind while the windows and the blinds are closed. None of the blinds are open. I'm capturing the light source that's remaining behind the front door. You can see it in the morning at 9 o'clock on a cloudy day. It was cloudy this morning. That engineer light is in the same position as it was 9 o'clock in the morning. It's just changing the level of concentration. It's the same placement that engineered light remains for the criminal purposes for demons, such as the one that you see stalking, group stalking in relevant position on the staircase outside of apartment number 41. You will see this at the image captured at 5:49 p.m. and 31 seconds. And you will see also as I open that front door and I capture images of the light source at 5:49, 29 seconds. Let me get that. 5:49 and 18 seconds, 5:49 and 21 seconds, 5:49 and 23 seconds, 24 seconds, 25 seconds as I keep capturing the light source, 26 seconds, 29 seconds. And I then begin opening the door where I am going to capture, I'm closing the door here. And as I close the door, I capture at 5:49 and 31 seconds, the relevant positioning by a demon-possessed family who is employing minor children. And that's, again, the evidence of what is abuse that the federal government is going to recognize while you are employing them and placing those children in harm's way. Understand what the entity is inflicting upon a person, a targeted individual who is subject to what is 24-hour surveillance of a demonic nature, that demonic environment. I'm speaking to you about amplification, vibrating the apartment, flashing of a dynamic engineered light, ongoing stalking with audible activity, this demon in apartment 55, and then you're using minor children, even coming in close proximity while you're group stalking with them. The entity would like to falsely depict the targeted individual who is subject to this sort of terrorism. You're placing that child in harm's way while you do so. Okay, you're dealing with human beings who are being targeted by a bunch of demons. And if something happens to that child, not stating that that is something that is warranted or advocated, I don't advocate violence, particularly against anyone, let alone children. But I'm letting you know with regard to this unstable, very dangerous and chaotic and demonic environment, criminal activity by the government who uses children to do so, the entity will then falsely depict that targeted individual who is being targeted by that child, threatening that adult. Or that target individual. I just happen to be an adult. And if you say something to that child, if you correct that child who is targeting you, you are the one that's looked at as the antagonist. You're the one that's looked at. So you need to understand the malice there. And also the real life threat, the real time threat to that child who is being placed in the path for a criminal purpose. And you do not know the mind state of that target individual. You don't know when they have gotten to an edge and where they're going to snap. And by the way, you're dealing with human beings, and that is also reasonably foreseeable. That is not evidence of what is a criminal that the target individual becomes because they are in that position, subject to that ongoing ceaseless psychological torture while a bunch of demons using children as well, which is what you're seeing under the fake sun and engineered light with simultaneity to my documentation on a communication device, exhibiting demon possession. That's what this child is doing. And then I just want to be clear, when you are placing that child in harm's way, and then that is, again, the entity that is setting that targeted individual up. I just want you to understand the position of the ordinary targeted individual. You will lose custody of those children who you place in harm's way. You clearly are not even concerned about their safety. You are also a threat to those children and American society while you're training them up under your demonic tutelage, teaching them not different from in Afghanistan where they're placing large guns in the arms and the hands of children and teaching them how to blow people's heads off. This is what the entity is doing when they're engaging in using children, engaging in demonic, which is malicious ways of targeting someone in ways in which the ordinary untrained eye that is not aware of what is spiritual all around you is occurring. It's very malicious. And while you are looking at documentation of abuse of minor children, you're looking at evidence of engaging in the criminal elements of monitoring with minor children on behalf of the state. You're losing custody. You're going to federal prison for that. And you are also engaging in what is placing that child in harm. And that's going to be the hardship with regard to even getting custody of those children back. And I just want to be clear. This is what I'm documenting, a population engaging. The entire complex of Alvarado Gardens used their children on an ongoing basis, had them engaging in surveillance in the laundry room while the fake sun remained over my office, which is shared with the laundry room building. At what point is the sun going to be over Woodside Senior Apartments when I'm documenting? That's already sitting on the record. That's speaking to the intent to engage in the pattern of conduct, and it doesn't change because the demons are using minor children to stalk with audible activity, light activity creation. That is a child exhibiting demon possession. And I've already spoken to, there is no legal exception or age restriction regarding what Satan is doing amongst the population. Just want to point that out. And as I am documenting, the children become louder. These are demons who are group stalking. So I'm not going to mince words with you. And the demons who are third parties, they have a legal status. They are third parties engaging in state surveillance representing the state of California who relies on children, those under the age of majority, not different from in Afghanistan, who lacks a constitution. Nonetheless, America is engaging in equally barbaric, if not more despicable, because the entity in California wants to make money and they want to appear as though we have some dignified, principled status above some country or some other place such as Afghanistan, and we don't. Okay, vibration of the building. I'm going to capture this on video right now. Alrighty, it is currently 6:27 p.m. and I did capture video of exactly what was the evidence of which I'm capturing on an ongoing basis. This is what you heard the Ontario International Airport engaging in at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, 2:41 a.m., then 2:44, then 2:46 a.m. That rapid ongoing frequency of commercial airline planes is based on the communication of a threat by an entity that's engaged in federal stalking. That is, not only are they group stalking me, they're engaged in criminal surveillance where I remain. They're also engaged in surveillance on the internet, on my phone. Everything that I say and do is public information, and that is the pattern of conduct that was exhibited while in real time as I'm speaking to the barbaric criminal conduct of a demon-possessed entity that includes the Ontario Police Department, who were already present. All they did was fly over with regard to maintaining the elements of monitoring, doing so while I am speaking to the criminal conduct that AVANATH Capital Management LLC, group stalking by living on the grounds in apartment 41 in the specific environment where the fake sun is rising and setting, is doing so while I am documenting blowing the whistle, it's a basis of federal prison. So I just want to be clear. That family is indeed engaged in the criminal conduct, and the terrorist conduct of the Ontario Police, which is not a legitimate law enforcement agency. They're a terrorist organization, and they have continuously proved that over the years, and they just did it again. While I am documenting a very specific P.O.C. in the specific environment, it is, in other words, nothing other than the criminal pattern of conduct and the outward demonstration of demon possession, the criminal intent to communicate a threat to the life of an American citizen who is enforcing their rights and speaking the truth about the satanic conduct that they are engaging in. That is not different with regard to placing large guns in the hands of children while you are using minor children to engage in a demonic pattern of conduct that is designed to keep an American citizen under surveillance. In America, the hypocrisy is decorated with what is capitalizing, making money, which is what AVANATH capital management represents. And their pockets are going to be drained based on the terrorism that I just captured flying over my head in a helicopter for purposes of criminal surveillance and federal stalking, and the criminal intent to obstruct justice, because Satan can't stand to hear the truth about itself and face the music regarding that exposure and your prosecution that is actually it's as real as it is as they're listening to me speak it right now. And so the entity flies over in helicopter, which is corroborating evidence against the people of the state. Okay. And the entity is living at the crime scene where you saw that fake sun at 2 p.m. and my upright shadow was on a wall as I was facing it at a distance away from me. That's the identical light activity at nightfall where you've seen the Ontario Police and a plethora of helicopters flying in circles, flying back and forth over this property, where the fake moon is present over this same property at night, where they are engaging in what is highly probative evidence against the demons who are the people of the state group stalking with it while it ever arrives in helicopter, vibrating the apartment, and also amplifying helicopter activity, which is nothing other than an ongoing method of audible activity, not different from what the demon in apartment number 55 and what the demons using commercial airline planes obviously and only exclusively deviating from any airport that's near Woodside Senior Apartments to be at the low elevation and then rise at an elevation as though they're taking off over the Woodside Senior Apartments. This is how the Ontario International Airport are the same idiots stalking under a fake sun and engineered light with the demons who are the Ontario Police Department in the same exact specific environment with the same entity as I'm documenting terrorism and federal stalking and criminal acts of obstruction of justice, which AVANATH Communities is directly engaged in, while their employees and the demons who are living with their employee on their property with the rest of the lessees who are paying AVANATH rent and who are coming onto the ground, which is what the commercial actor that guy represents, who is documented, and he's going to federal prison. The entity did the same thing today while I'm documenting on my phone, not even speaking out loud. I'm typing in what that guy was engaged in. That guy is a commercial actor. I captured the light source. I captured the light activity that this commercial actor, this is a vendor, is on the property engaged in. And as I documented that, immediately the entity sounds helicopter activity flying over and vibrating this apartment. That's exactly what I captured on video, and that's exactly what is documented earlier today. And that guy, that license plate, this is a Latino male, I believe, who's driving that vehicle. He's crossing path on video. He's engaging and monitoring me by physically crossing path while I'm capturing the video at 2:00 in the afternoon, and he's going to federal prison. Okay. The entity is engaging in the pattern of threatening your life. That is no American citizen, as I'm speaking to, exposing what the state of California is engaging in, what the U.S. is doing toward American citizens, which is Satan's work against particularly those who know Christ. But this is a surveillance system and it's satanic at its core. And the entity is engaging in what is targeting me while this surveillance system is underway. So the entity is engaging in what is a pattern of conduct which is intended to obstruct justice by engaging in more terrorism and more harassment as a demonic entity while it is hostile to your exposing the criminal system that is acting in furtherance to a conspiracy to murder and kidnap you. That is highly psychotic. Okay, so the entity does this as a pattern, and I have documented it for years, specifically even by the demons that Mike LORENZ, this is a demon-possessed person who is over a demon-possessed department who's engaging in exhibiting demon possession while they're engaging in the demonic pattern of conduct of group stalking. All right, the entity is doing so with knowledge of what I say as I say it while they engage in that very unique pattern of conduct where the fake sun is present in that same video. You're going to literally look at the light source over me at the same doorstep at 9:28 in the morning, and you'll see the Ontario Police Department. These are demons group stalking, and you will, let's count the hours, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that would be 9 hours later while the fake sun, as I'm standing at the same doorstep, is in alignment to my person that's stalking. That is evidence through the population. That's how you know the population is stalking, because the fake sun is remaining in alignment to me. That is targeting me through the unnatural environment and also targeting clearly seen while the demons, again, 9 hours later, evidence of what is duration of time analysis and also also the juxtaposition analysis. Everywhere else that the fake sun is at, there's no possible way that the sun would, on its face, be present at one address for 9 to 10 hours. But also, it's never going to be in San Diego. It's never going to be at any position while I'm on the freeway driving to and from Las Vegas, Nevada. It's never going to be over Alvarado Gardens in Los Angeles. So what is it that is surrounding me in that environment while the LAPD is engaging in the same targeting conduct using helicopters? And that is the prosecution of the state of California. And this is also the removal, the disbanding, and the support for policies that are also needful. And this is speaking to the demilitarization of these terrorist organizations who are preparing themselves. They are arming themselves for a beast system that is coming. I just want to be clear. The birthing pains of that beast system, it's already in existence. It's already being practiced, unbeknownst to you. System of surveillance is already underway, and it is the work of Satan. In addition to that, it's not only speaking for the demilitarization of these terrorist organizations, at least in the states where federal group stalking and monitoring is underway. But I advocate for, in this country, the demilitarization as opposed to arming these demons who are joining police departments while they are entirely sociopathic, psychopathic, antisocial, demon-possessed criminals who want to be a part of a police department in order to act out their chaotic spirits, the violence that's harbored in their hearts while they serve Satan, bearing weapons and bearing badges. And this is how you have a police department stalking an American citizen in helicopters. That's exactly how you get that. All right. The entity is doing so with regard to real-time knowledge of what I'm doing on my phone. That's federal stalking in violation of Title 18, Section 2261A, subsections 1 and 2. And what you heard in the background, the voices of children, it is indeed what I told you. Those are exhibiting demon possession. The entity is engaging what is audible activity and pacing, which is demonic, using minor children under the age of majority. And the demon possessed are exceedingly hostile while I speak to you the truth about the nature of what they are while they're doing what they're doing. And it's criminal. And it's also the practice of demonic activity. And it's right in front of your face. And it's also unintelligent because you can see when you look up in the sky above you out in Montana, there's not possibly the sun that's over you while I have evidence of what is for 11 plus hours. There's a fake sun remaining over Woodside Senior Apartments, and the engineered light isn't even sunlight. It has nothing to do with sunlight. It's breaking down the demonic environment that surrounds you. It's called engineered light. It's directed light, impossible light activity, as I have termed it. And this is where the entity is indeed engaged in what is stalking as a population. That is group stalking, state organized stalking, using the police departments who use helicopters in California. They like to use helicopters to traumatize, to terrorize, harass as an entity, not just that police department. It's the entire state that is pursuing you, stalking you as a population using helicopters, which is relevant to the criminal intent to psychologically torture and psychologically torture and terrorize as one entity who is necessarily engaged in federal stalking in violation of existing federal statute. Title 18, 2261A, subsections 1 and 2. That's evidence against the people. So I just want to be clear. AVANATH Communities is civilly and criminally liable for what the state of California is doing on its property, for what the people of the state are doing on its property. And this is at 6:36 p.m. ongoing amplification. So I want to let you hear that. This is while the doors are closed. And that is the demons that are listening to them being documented at the Ontario International Airport. That is on its face the violation of the quiet enjoyment, the contractual rights that the demons who are group stalking and not complaining about, they have a right to, they're entitled to, and the entity is doing this at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. That's clearly a violation of also the zoning. There's no airport over here where there would be at a low elevation over a senior citizen complex at that, and as though they're taking off. The entity is taking off from the Ontario International Airport and any other airport, because there's no airport over here. Where they would be already at an elevation where it's not going to disrupt you inside of your apartment. The entity is doing so while the fake sun is over this property right now, and also while impossible light activity. And that is, again, on the watch of a demon, a dangerous, corrupt government actor, Alan D. WAPNER. And that's the foolish conduct that you heard at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, and increasing it just like the demons do as they listen to their exposure, as they listen to the facts, what you know about their condition, which is no longer a secret, as they listen to things that need to come, such as demilitarization of terrorist organizations who are documented group stalkers, which is what the state of California is going to be on the books. It's going to be prosecuted, but also not only demilitarization, but an education requirement in order to be a part of law enforcement. This is also speaking to the necessity of that, because no sociopath should be able to walk in off the street, get past the academy, and be added on to the force. The federal group stalking and monitoring criminal system that is underway in this country necessitates at the very least an education requirement, a 4-year degree with regard to something that is relevant to the Constitution. Constitution, you should not only be able to spell it, but you should know about the fundamental bases and not all just be able to recite an oath that they don't even regard. They treat it as fecal matter under their feet when they're engaging in this criminal pattern of conduct, doing so with clear disregard to common sense and basic fundamental principles regarding the unnatural environment where they're group stalking. And only demons are group stalking in the specific environment. These are demons that are stalking in commercial airline planes while they're listening to me recite policies that need to surround the states that are engaged in federal group stalking and monitoring. They are relying on the demon-possessed and corrupt terrorist organizations masquerading as law enforcement agencies, engaging in the criminal conduct that you just heard, terrorizing an American citizen using helicopters. I want to be clear, Mike LORENZ is surrounded with a cloud of controversy that is inevitable. And this is speaking to not only his voluntary resign, this is speaking to, he doesn't have a choice. He's going to be plucked out and removed. Okay. This is public corruption exposed. The departments are not engaging in conduct that is a unique statewide P.O.C. pattern of conduct ignorantly. Okay. The head of that department is the same exact condition and knows exactly what these demons that are bearing badges, bearing weapons, exercising fictitious authority while they're engaging in this criminal system. The head of that department, which is the chief of police, knows all about it and they're fully engaged in it. Okay, you will be removed from the position that you hold. It's the same for the demons over these corrupt airports, engaging in state surveillance, as I've shown on the freeways, on the roads and highways, from city to city, county to county, including state to state. Because like I stated, when this entity was flying over at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, where there is no airport, that is an explanation regarding the low elevation that they're hunkered down, that's targeting, over a senior citizen complex at 2 in the morning, necessarily violating principles such as quiet enjoyment and zoning laws, where there is a place for airplanes to be taking off. And Terminal 2, Terminal 4 is nowhere near Woodside Senior Apartments. There is a necessary deviation from any location from the airport in order to be over the Woodside Senior Apartments. And also to do so, you're necessarily lowering down in elevation in order to be at that in order to be at the elevation where they are, and then rising in elevation. They're not taking off. It's not rocket science. It's not even intelligent. It's as unintelligent, it's as idiotic as the fake sun remaining over the property for 12 hours. There's no other way to put that. The entity does so with regard to its criminal conduct, and they engage in what is both foolish. It's foolish with regard to a prosecutor who's going to point out what you're doing and point out the details on all the ways in which you shall be prosecuted for it, such as stalking in a helicopter when I'm pointing out your criminal co-conspirator. You and that criminal co-conspirator are going to federal prison. And by the way, there is necessarily a demon that is over that department that's practicing a pattern of conduct that is very unique. Okay, so I just want to make sure that all of this is understood with regard to what I was documenting, and I did capture video, and I'm going to add that to the podcast. It is currently, again, 6:40 p.m. This is all relevant to what the people of the state who are profiting while this criminal system, that is the ongoing conspiracy to murder and kidnap someone, while the government who arrived in video and on this podcast, AVANATH Communities has no rights to retain any profits while the ongoing conspiracy to murder and kidnap someone is happening on their real property through any means, not only their employees, not only the lessees, not only the population, random people coming onto the property, engaging in this criminal system, acting to murder and kidnap someone, but also the vendors that they have relationships with are engaging in that pattern of conduct while the entity is using planes and helicopters over their property in violation of zoning laws, in violation of quiet enjoyment contractual rights. In other words, clearly in opposition to common sense and how the environment would look and operate and how things actually work absent federal group stalking and monitoring. Okay, so this is an entity that engages in conduct outside of the purview of providing any legal sense or any knowledge of how things such as, for example, zoning laws and common sense regarding a plane taking off from an airport and it's not going to be at a lowered elevation directly over the apartment buildings. The address of the nearest airport is at no location anywhere where the plane is going to be hunkered down over the apartment complex. And the entity's pattern of conduct, engaging in more of that which is being exposed as I expose it, is analogous to arriving in a helicopter as I'm speaking to the barbaric and animalistic conduct of a government that uses minor children. And it is not different than placing large bazookas in the arms of children and teaching them how to blow people's head off like they're doing across the seas. And America would like to think that it's different. And the unfortunate reality is that it's not. Okay, it is currently 6:42 p.m. This is going toward the recovery that AVANATH Communities is going to provide me. All right. And I'm also going to prosecute them for criminal activity that they are engaged in. This is P.O.C.